me a link to your live stream so I can share it.
Hey, what's up, nerds? This is Paul at Radio Free Hammer Hall, along with Josh, the Demon Prince of Cornucopia. We are here to apparently get spiders off of
Yeah, one came down from the tree. Oh, don't want to deal with that.
We are going to be reviewing the General's Handbook 2020 today. I'm going to try and hit all the high points, and we're just going to go through the book in order, which means for all of you people that really only care about a points discussion, fast forward to the end. And I was trying to figure out how I share this out on social media that we're here, but I don't know how to do that. So we're just going to go. We have people viewing already anyway. It's fine.
I'm subscribed to you, so I can actually, I got the link.
Oh,
it looks pretty good.
All right. So overall impression of General's Handbook 2020 before we even got started. High level view, overall feeling on the book.
You want to go first, Paul?
I'm asking you.
Oh, me? Oh, I love it. I love it. I think it's the best book written so far, and I know I can't understand. I haven't looked at a lot of reviews of this book, so when I hear that there's a lot of negative criticism of the book, it blows my mind, because in a lot of ways, what this book says to me is that GW is listening. They genuinely care about the rules. The rules are written, I think, as well as, you know, they're a huge improvement. I think this book goes above and beyond my expectations of GW, so I give it a 10 out of 10. I love it. It's my favorite book so far, and I was expecting much less.
Yeah, I really like this book a lot myself. I'm not going to go quite as far as 10 out of 10 because I think there's always room for improvement, but I'm going to give it a solid 8.
So when I say 10 out of 10, I don't mean it's a perfect book. I kind of I have an expectation, right?
Yeah.
And when I say 10 out of 10, I mean 10 out of 10. It met my expectations and went beyond that. Is there room for improvement? Absolutely. I mean, there's always this is an iteration of a game that we love, and there's always room for improvement.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So I guess without further ado, let's get into it. So our first section is Skies of Slaughter. This is our aerial battle rules. Starting in open play. This is in the open play section. Overall, I think this is a really cool concept. This is one of the coolest things that Games Workshop has ever put out for Age of Sigmar that no one's going to play. And I think that's unfortunate because it looks like they put a lot of time and effort into these rules.
It's like 20 pages.
Yeah, there's a lot of pages to this thing. Let's see, where does it end?
It's starts on. Yeah,
oh god, it goes all the way to the campaign and all of the. Yeah, so from 9 to 39. So yeah, it's 20 pages of this. Are dedicated to Skies of Slaughter, and I feel like for the amount of effort that they put into this, there's going to be an unfortunately low number of people playing it.
Specifically with what's going on around with COVID, it's. I think that normally you'd see people just out and about, trying this out en masse. I mean, we would have hosted a tournament just for this in our local game store, but we can't host tournaments right now. Right. I think it looks awesome.
Yeah, it looks like they put a lot of thought into the rules, and they probably play tested this a whole bunch. Some of it kind of reminds me of mechanics of games like X-Wing. I don't really know X-Wing that well, but from what I know of it, seems kind of reminiscent. but I mean, they really took a lot of time with this, and I encourage people to try it. I'm going to try and find other people that want to try it, because it just seems super cool. I don't know how the balance works out with the different war scrolls for the different flying creatures that you can include, but it, in general, it just seems really good to me.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like the monsters in the game are so wildly different that the balance would just be awful.
Right.
There's no point system, and for example, like a ghoul king on a terrorgeist is just inherent, or what abhorrent ghoul king on a terrorgeist or a zombie dragon is. It's better than a guy not riding it. But what's cool about it is it just seems like kind of a nice little brawl game that you and your buddies get together and I'm going to be this monster, I'm going to be that monster. It doesn't seem like a tournament style game.
Right. But making just a quick comparison, I'm looking at like the Achillean Leviathan versus the Achillean Alapex. And the thing that jumps out to me immediately is, the Leviathan has more wounds, more toughness, but the Alapex is way more maneuverable.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
So, and that's probably going to be a key element. I think some of the smaller monsters may just be way more maneuverable, and that's how it gets balanced out, in theory at least. So I conceptually really like it, and I really want to try it. I don't know if we're going to get like enough people to do a campaign at my local store. It seems like something we would do, though. So I'm going to try and recruit people to actually play this because it seems like a lot of fun.
Yeah, like I'm just even looking at the Bloodthirsters here. It just seems like the Wrath of Khorne Bloodthirster is better than all the other ones, but there's no like point allocated values to all the monsters. So again, there are some monsters in this game that are just inherently better than others, and to me, I just think you're better off just playing this game for fun.
Right.
Like if you're having a tournament, like don't take it so seriously. Have prizes, like fun prizes for sure have one for the guy who wins, right? But make sure that it's not so catered to the winner as much as it's catered toward things like hobbying and sportsmanship and telling fun stories and things like that.
Right. Definitely agree. So the next section is the open war battle generator.
Yeah.
I have this unfortunate little dichotomy that I love open war. Like, I think the open war cards are great. I think this table generator is fantastic. I've just played with them like once, and I wish I would play with them more. It's something that I just keep forgetting that I have the deck in my bag every time I go to play. So I am, and I think they are learning from what they did in Warcry as well with this, and applying some of the stuff from Warcry kind of into here. And some of this was inspiring Warcry. So I think, between the two, we definitely have some really interesting scenarios. Your objectives, personal agendas, ruses, twists. Like, there's enough stuff here. They've reduced it to D6 tables, and I'm pretty sure there's more than like 6 cards of each in the open war deck. But it's at least enough variety that you're going to be hard pressed to play the same game twice.
I was actually going to ask you, I mean, I have my own open war cards. When we did play all the time, it was almost always open war. It was very rarely a game from the like tournament official battle plans, because we would play those battle plans at all these tournaments we would go to so often I was like, I just want to play something weird, and I want to play 4 players. I want to, and it's a giant free for all, open war. You know, it just or just we would just make it up sometimes. I definitely agree with you. These open war battle generator plans are super fun, and they just let you play the game in some weird and wacky way. And like, what I love about it is it makes it more difficult to come to the table with like this custom tailored army for the existing battle plans.
Right.
It keeps things fresh and exciting. I think that's what I'm really trying to say.
Yeah, and I like with that we have 2 different map tables, and table 1 is like very vanilla setups, and table 2 is the wild and crazy setups. So you can kind of set the level of wackiness that you and whoever you're playing with, whether it's one person or a group of people. You can just you can set the level of wackiness to whatever level you think is appropriate and have at it.
Well, I like to let the dice decide. I'd roll a d2 and let that choose the table for me.
Anything in particular out of this jump out at you that you wanted to talk about?
No, I think it's well written. There's a lot of fun things going on here. A lot of like abilities that are relevant. There's some like sweet things that kind of punish specific armies. So like someone might be at a disadvantage, and overall, and they're like, I love things like take a look at the ruse table, for example. I love bribery. Like that's a really fun ability to just like, once per battle at the start of the combat phase, this warlord can pick a player in the opposing coalition and subtract 1 from hit rolls for units that player controls until the end of the phase. Like there's like all right, this is a key moment. You're -1 to hit now, and it's like this is my moment to choose it. Maybe they'll choose it too. Who knows? But I like those kind of abilities where like everybody gets this once per turn, like super powerful ability.
Yeah. And it seems like this is also playable with 2 players if you wanted to play 2 players.
Yeah.
Like I don't really see anything in here that is saying like, oh, this only works if you have like 4 players.
Right. Or like the twist table, the uneasy alliances. That's really meant for more than 2 players.
Yeah, but if you're playing 2 players and you get that, you could just reroll.
Yeah.
All right. So are you ready for some narrative?
So
more room rules for team battles?
I do like. Okay, so one of my big things is like they finally they defined the concept of a game master, a GM.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important in a narrative setting, is to have like all these people who are playing the game, but then a neutral party to help move things along.
Right. I definitely agree. And it helps a lot when you're doing this. The game master effectively acts like the TO.
Yeah.
And that's, sometimes in a game that's important to have. When you have multiple players, you need that independent third party to look at what's going on and, resolve things if needed. And have them also, like with some of the mechanics in here, they're the neutral third party that's keeping track of information.
Like the assassination attempt?
Yes.
I would love to use that just over and over. Just GM and just let my opponent know I am attempting assassination. I'm spending 3 points. Here you go. Here's my letter. Just that stuff is just so fun.
Right. I definitely agree. And unfortunately, like I don't really play multiplayer games. And I feel like I need to do that a lot more because it's clearly a lot of fun, and there's a lot of rules. A lot, like every GHB has more stuff for multiplayer.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of multiplayer stuff in this General's Handbook.
This is another good one. Look at it. You can have a betrayal. All right. At the start of the battle round, before any endless spells are moved, a player who is not a warlord can declare that they are defecting from their team. Like, that kind of stuff is so great. They have to spend 3 command points, and once they've defected, they are allowed 5 minutes to discuss with the other players what will happen. They might be welcomed into the other coalition or forsaken.
And then it becomes a 3-way battle.
It's a 3-way battle. But that kind of stuff is the stuff that it's not discussed very often in rules, but it's the kind of stuff that sometimes you just want to do it because you're feeling a little crazy.
Yeah. This definitely reminds me a little bit of like Triumph and Treachery too.
Yeah.
Where wacky stuff can just happen. I remember that was actually the last game of 8th edition that I played was a 4-player Triumph and Treachery free-for-all. And it took all day, and it was fantastic.
Like, I mean, I can't tell you how many times if Brian's watching, sometimes I just want to betray him for fun, just to see, like, look at his face. What the hell, man? It's happening. Blood for the blood god. Or like you're Skaven. Like, why would you not?
Yeah. I mean, we're going to get to it later, but the let me flip to it real quick just so that I remember what it's called. The chart, the coalition matrix. That Skaven literally has no Battleforged coalitions, including with other Skaven.
Are they not even friends with Nurgle?
No.
What? But there's some
They're
weird
not
ones.
themselves.
They're not even friends with each other.
Which is like the most Skaven possible thing.
I do love that. I love that I love how fluffy it is. So anyway, yeah. I'm a huge fan of the narrative campaign. I love that they like put rules into like these weird decisions that you could make, like the betrayal, or even bought favors. Like there's a lot of cool interactions, like political interactions between the players, but they're all centered around spending command points. So there are rules regarding making these political interactions. So I imagine like you're going to reach 3 command points and all of a sudden there's just going to be this awkward silence. Like, oh my God, is this guy going to do something crazy? And
you just write a list that starts with 3 command points and you just sit on them the whole game.
Right. Yeah. Start writing in your notebook and everyone's looking at you like, uh-oh, something's happening. You're like, no, I'm writing in my diary. That's all that's happening right now.
Yeah. Pass notes to the GM that are just smile and nod. This doesn't say anything.
I just spent 3 command points. What happened? You'll find out. I'm a huge fan. Like this one team battle special rules page, I was looking at this and like, oh my God, there are going to be so many fun things that happen with these rules, and there are going to be so many like just contentious moments, and I love that.
Yeah. So the next section is the Whisper Engine. This is our map battle campaign, which is a really cool concept. I really want to try this for like a league. I think I might need to like make a bigger map, but like for a campaign, because we probably would have more like 10 to 15 players if we were doing a campaign at our store. And this is designed for 4 to 7, but doesn't mean you can't expand.
I think you could have like, I mean, it's effectively a grid, just all the shapes are mishmashed around, right?
Kind of close to a grid anyway.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it would be really fun. It's so hard to get a campaign running and have it like go from start to finish.
Right.
So
what I really like that they did with this is that there are special locations on the map that, like, each place on the map is not just a generic location. Like, there's certain ones where you have an effect. Like, all of your prayers are +1. All of your spell casting is +1.
See an extra command point.
Yep. It's nice that the map is interacting with you.
Yep.
And that makes certain places on the map more attractive to attack.
Yeah, for sure. There's like a lot of cool stuff going on. It reminds me a lot of Warhammer Total War. I don't know if you've ever played it.
I have not.
This mode, it's almost like Warhammer Total War, the board game. And
Yeah,
that I really appreciate that.
Yeah, it definitely I like it a lot. And I think it's expandable. You can do this with more players than 7, I think, if you really want to. How many spaces in total are there on the board?
I thought there was like 20-ish. 5, 10.
I said 19. And I don't feel like counting them.
There's an odd number.
Yeah, there's 19. So, I mean, I think if you're playing with more than 7, you just start everybody with 1 territory.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of terminology in here that's very similar to Total War. I think that somebody over at GW plays Total War, if not all of them, and they need to make something similar to this game. It's such an awesome game. If you haven't played Total War 2, and there's Total War 3 coming out for Warhammer, highly recommend. I have 1,000 hours minimum in that game, and it's all your favorite tabletop characters and pieces all wrapped up into a really well designed digital game experience. It is not that will never replace Age of Sigmar, but like it is very fun, and it reminds me a lot of that.
Right. Next section, Coalition of Death. This is basically like your multiplayer battle plans, and some additional multiplayer rules.
But this is not the match play multiplayer.
Right. This is the narrative play multiplayer, as opposed to the open play multiplayer that is the open war generator. Right. This is like the General's Handbook if you want to play multiplayer. Like, there's so much multiplayer content in this that it's like they're trying to like knock on the door with everybody and be like, guys, there's more than match play.
Well, I multiplayer in general is just more approachable in this game, at least in a tournament environment where not everybody has or wants to put the thousands of hours that we pour into painting our miniatures if they have to paint like 2,000 or in my case 10,000 points of corn so I can play multiple renditions of my own army. But the idea that I only have to paint 1,000 points worth to play with my buddy and to go to an event, it's more approachable. And I think GW recognized it, and there were a lot of problems translating the match play rules from a single player game to a multiplayer game. And
Right.
GW just took a look, I think, at all the tournaments that have been being played in the past year or two, and all the different house rules that have been put into play, and kind of said, all right, this makes sense, that doesn't make sense, this we're going to expand upon, and they put them into this book, and it's one of my favorite parts of this book.
Yeah. This book makes me really want to play multiplayer. And I didn't really think that was a thing that was going to ever be a thing for me. You know?
What's better than playing Warhammer with one person, like playing Warhammer with 3 people?
Yeah.
It's like the natural evolution.
Yeah. And it takes the dumb shit happens level up.
Right.
Considerably.
Right. Yeah.
So this gives us a bunch of more detailed scenarios that are a little bit more like match play scenarios, except they're a little bit more narratively designed. Like launch the attack is clearly like an attacker-defender scenario rather than like everybody's starting off evenly and there's a symmetrical battlefield. I think that's a really cool design.
I'd love to play it.
What?
I said I would love to play it, but
yeah,
in a tournament setting, I mean, if you're playing against something like OBR and Fire Slayers, I don't know if that would be very fun. Those are very defensive armies. Unless they were on the offensive, then it's the shoes on the other foot.
Yeah. Then OBR would still win.
Yeah, well, hopefully not.
Yeah.
But maybe, probably. It depends. There's some good armies against her.
Yeah. So, turning the page to, I think, the crown jewel of this book,
Right.
Anvil of Apotheosis. Can we just take a moment to thank our Lord and Savior, Sam Pearson, that
he made this?
Yes, this is Sam's creation.
I was going to say, it's pretty good.
At very least, it's Sam's idea.
Yeah.
I don't know what percentage of this he worked on, but I did get confirmation that this is a Sam creation.
Okay.
And I told Ben Johnson to give him a hug for me.
Because Sam Pearson has quite literally written every book that I love. He's written Korn. I think he wrote Slaves to Darkness. He wrote the new Iron Jaws book. Like any book that has an army that you want to play against just because you're like, this is going to be a good game. I don't know if I'm going to win, but I'm going to have a great time. Like, and as long if you're playing a Sam Pearson army against another Sam Pearson army, it's always a good game.
Yes.
I guess that's how I can put it. At least that's been my experience.
Yeah. So this section lets you build custom characters, which is the thing that narrative players have already been sort of doing forever. Yeah. But now we actually have like a rubric for it that not only that is also potentially portable to match play. And is really cool, really good. I already did like I think I did like an hour video talking about this already. So I'm not going to go into too crazy detail. But basically you pick your ancestry, which is, a more PC way of saying pick your race. All of those have different stats, different costs associated with them. Like everything costs destiny points. They recommend that you play either 20 destiny points or 40 destiny points to create your heroes. Although if you're playing narrative play, I say do whatever the hell you want, because that's what narrative play is about. How do you feel about like the base races that we have here, like the base stats?
So the first thing I love about this is it kind of gives us some insight to how GW prices characters and units, at least from a character standpoint. Uh, like you can extrapolate a lot of this and kind of figure out their mindset on, what are wounds worth, what are saves worth, what is movement worth, except in the case of Graz. But
Yeah.
poor Graz. They just seem like they get the short end of the stick. Maybe it's because of their keywords. Who knows? Anyway, what do I think about the pricing on these things? I mean, they all look like, I was looking them over, and I was like, how can I turn a demon into a dragon ogre, for example? And it's impossible because your bravery is set to 10 by default. But
Right.
adding 3 inches of movement and 5 wounds, for example, would cost. Let's see.
It would cost 10.
It would end up costing me 10, right?
Yeah.
Which to me is like, I think that there's definitely a formula that went into this page, and there's like a little bit of fluffiness, meaning if you want to start with a dragon ogre, he's going to be more expensive. If you want to start with a demon, it's going to be more expensive than an elf or a human, but only mildly so. And for an elf or a human to acquire the statistics of a demon, they would have to spend 5 points anyway. So I think that I love it. I love the whole thing. I mean, maybe there's some points adjustments that need to be made, but I think overall all of the races seem appropriately costed, especially when I was building heroes myself.
Yeah. When you sit down and actually start to build heroes, the initial mistake that I made with experimenting with the balance in this was trying to replicate an existing hero, like stat for stat. And when you do that, it doesn't come out right. It definitely makes, like, your Anvil and Apotheosis heroes are going to be a lot more expensive most of the time than your, provided War Scroll heroes. But that's to make them the exact same stats. There's ways to make them very close, like their damage output is basically the same because they're just using a different weapon. That when you start doing that, it closes that gap. So I feel like all of this is actually generally really balanced.
Yeah. You can't make any. What you're trying to say is you're not making something to be the same as an existing hero. You're making something to kind of like fill in the gap. That, like, if you were making a Bone Reaper hero, for example, you might make something that has ranged attack power.
Right.
Because there's no Bone Reaper out there that really has like a missile, a really good missile weapon. And so, like, maybe you want a Bone Reaper hero with a really good missile weapon. You could, let's see, maybe you want a tanky Skaven hero that does great melee damage and has high bravery. I don't know. It's up to you. There's just, you're making something to fill a role outside of your roster that you already have access to, and therefore it's going to cost a little bit more than a hero would normally cost.
Right. I definitely agree with that. I think the armory is giving you enough options for weapons for like your starting point that you have a lot of flexibility in what you're doing.
Sure.
And you also have the ability to just go straight to, I'm going to go fluff and I want to build a hero with a two-handed hammer, and that's just the stats that I get. And
right. Or like you could even make it up. You've got this. You could extend this template if you're doing something purely narrative and say, my guy has 6 arms. and
Yeah.
I'm going to spend points for weapons on each hand, like whatever.
Yep.
And
that would be an excellent Nurgle hero.
sure, in some ways you can do this already. Like, for example, I could make a hero with 2 sword weapons and add additional attacks with DP to the sword weapon to emulate the or to extend the idea that he's got 4 arms and they all have swords, and so like give him 2 sword weapons and additional attacks for each.
Yep.
Just simple, fun things like that.
Yeah. I think the archetypes are really good too. The 2 command abilities that you get to choose from, like those are good basic utility command abilities that basically every army can use. Although I will put an asterisk next to that and say lead the defense is not useful for Nighthawk.
True, but that's why you have lead the attack, and lead the attack is very useful to Nighthawk.
Yeah,
like true. Insanely good.
The priest spells are good. Either do D3 mortal wounds to something within 18 inches. Like 18 inches is a pretty good range.
Yeah.
And then your other option is a 6-up ward, which, by the way, the thing that everybody else has been mentioning, ward saves are ward saves now. They are called ward saves in the abilities section of this, and they function like 8th edition ward saves now. So everybody, they're ward saves now.
No stackable saves.
Yeah, but we'll get there. We'll get there. For the wizard, the spells are all really good, I think. I really like, in terms of fluff, that you can basically give any army a necromancer. Like, that's just a really cool concept to me, that, you know, that the necromancy is not limited to, like, forces of death. We've got our, you know, there's humans living in the realm of death. There's, you know, there's like, you know, order cities in the realm of death. So, you know, some of them are probably going to know some necromantic magic. And of course, we got a ward save in there. We've got some mortal wounds. Wildfire, I think, is a solid spell. That's like a horde killer spell.
I think they're all great. Like, you got to pick whichever one kind of suits your army.
Right. And
I think the raised dead one looks fun.
Yep. And I like that these have these all have restrictions as well. So acolytes can't be demons, death mages, Saurus, or Skaven except Clan Pestilence. You can't have a commander that's a death mage or master clan, and you can't have a wizard that is Dordan, Khorne, or Saurus.
I was saddened by the fact that you cannot make a demon priest. Like, that immediately stuck out to me as a Khorne player. I'm like, I want to make a demon priest, and then I was like, sweet, I can make a demon priest. Oh no, I can't. So upset. But you know, it's whatever. It's fine.
So you're stuck with a mortal priest with the stats of a demon.
Right. I can make Josh. I can make Josh in Warhammer lore the mortal demon priest general with a 3 save. Even though they're pretty good, though.
Yeah.
The Shield of Faith is not bad. Like you said, the Wrathful Invocation is really just, especially in Khorne, Wrathful Invocation is just like a better arcane ball.
Right.
It's not bad. It's really good. It's simple. It's a re-rollable 3+ for do 3 mortal wounds. Okay. And it's also it's Khorne.
You can get an ability that gives them +1 to their prayers. So that would be a 2-up rerollable.
Oh, look, Corn is already good on the prayer front. You know,
Yeah.
3 of rerollable is fine. But the nice thing, let's see. Oh, but you know what? It doesn't matter if you get, because judgments are not prayers. Like Corn Priest can cast judgments. I believe you won't get +1 though to those, because I think it specifically states the +1 is for prayers only. Yeah, it's prayers only. So I actually don't think the +1 for Corn prayers on Priest is worth it, because the judgments are not prayers. Neither are the blood blessings. So you would strictly have a re-rollable 3+, which is plenty. Like that's really good.
Yeah. So up next is the Bestial Companions. I had to say that I love that we all got like the Corgus Cull option, that everybody can have like a little pet with them.
Yeah, like you could have a parrot with a weapon.
Yeah.
All these things are just templates too. So like when it says claws,
Yeah.
you could have a monkey with swords.
You know what they did? They went claws and maw on all 3, so that in the companion options table, they could just reference claws and maw.
Right.
And you can just rename it on your war scroll.
Rename it, put whatever you want on there, as long as they fit the bill. You know,
Right.
it's. I love it. I think it's perfect.
Yep. Some people have been a little disappointed in the mounted beast. I'm not sure I understand. I like it. It works.
Yeah, you get additional movement, and you add 2 to
your
wounds characteristic for 8. Like, and you get an additional attack profile. That seems good to me.
Yeah. And I think the only thing that I would say is I wish the claws were 4 up, 4 up on this instead of 5 up, 5 up. I feel like that would have been a little bit better of a starting point.
Well, let's see.
It just takes an additional 2 DP to get there anyway.
So adding 1 to your hero's move characteristic is 2 DP to begin with. So you're adding, in most cases, 2 or more.
Right.
So
adding 2 wounds will cost you 4.
Right. So as a demon, if you're a mounted demon, like that right there is 6 DP. And then adding 2 to your hero's wounds characteristic is 1 per. So like you're actually getting a lot of value by just giving yourself a mount. If you're going to go for like additional movement and wounds characteristic anyway, the mount is just like free attack profiles.
Right. Definitely. And then you can turn it into cool stuff. Like you can turn this into almost exactly the Nurgle fly really easily.
Yeah. I'm looking over all these things. Like imagine doing this with like a Dwarden.
Yeah, we would love mounted Dwarden.
Right. That's awesome. Like
trying to model it would be interesting, but like, you know, like they can serve on a horse. The monster table, the gargantuan beast.
Yep.
I would like to just point out that these stats are basically what the Free Guild Griffins are. Like its base stats are a Griffin.
Oh yeah. This thing's awesome.
Yeah. So your gargantuan beast, I think, is really good.
4 damage.
Yeah. It's bananas, right?
I think this thing's going to be awesome with like Dwarden.
Right.
I think Dwarden is like one of the like cheapest, best heroes to build.
Yeah. And how cool would it be to just have a dispossessed Duarden riding a Magmadroth. Like there's the thing that's so awesome about this is there's so many great conversion options.
Yeah, I'm looking over and I'm just like, this looks awesome. There's so many like cool ways to do this.
Yeah. And then our last page is just basically all of our character upgrades. You don't have to go through all of them, but like you can add wounds, you can add to hit, you can add attacks, you can add to wound damage. You can give yourself a ward save, you can fly, you can add to prayers, you can add to spell casting, you can double tap on 6s, do mortal wounds on 6s. You can be like a battle standard bearer, which is almost the exact same rules as like the 8th edition battle standard bearer.
Yep.
Or actually, no, 8th edition general did that. And the battle standard bearer gave you rerolls.
And there's even fair restrictions on these. Like the characteristic enhancements can only be chosen up to 3 times. So you can't make anything so like outlandish and crazy that it will ruin the game.
Yeah. My personal disappointment is I really, really loved my Bretonnian Lord on Pegasus, and I cannot rebuild anything remotely close to that. Because your damage, like your movement on a mounted beast gets capped at 11, and that moves 16.
There's a lot of heroes that like players have wanted to play for a long time. Maybe they've been decommissioned, or maybe they just don't exist in lore anymore. Whatever, that they can rebuild using this book because they have the model and they want to play it.
Right. Like I can build a like less good version of the Lord on Pegasus, but it will definitely be less good. But then again, before they changed the war scroll on that, it was bonkers good for 140 points. It was like 5 attacks, 3s and 3s, rend 1, like D3 plus 1 damage on the charge.
Yeah.
And you could give him an artifact that gave him plus 1 damage. So he would be D3 plus 2 damage. And then a command trait that gave him an extra attack. So 6 attacks, 3s and 3s, rend 1 D3 plus 2 damage when it charged you.
But
and
even
after it charged you, there was no unit left.
Yeah, like even that though, it's like the points you'd have to pour into making that happen are totally fair.
Right. I think in the world we live in today, like that hero would be a lot more than 140 points.
Yeah. So overall thoughts on? So they have the whole open play fun rules, like this is fun, but then they talk about match play and they go, this is strictly a house rule for match play. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's fine if you set the proper guardrails in place for match play. I think match play is gonna make some weird things happen. Everybody's going to have a 3-up ethereal save if you do match play.
I don't think so.
I think it's really cheap to do that. So
4 points for ethereal. That's not cheap.
It's not, but it probably should be more.
I guess it gets more effective the more wounds you have. So if you create like a mounted hero and amp up the wounds, sure. Yeah, it's going to be more effective, but the lower your wound count, the less effective that ethereal armor is going to be.
Yeah.
I don't think the ethereal stuff is even a problem. I'm not even concerned.
Yeah. I think that's, that's one of the things that people have been concerned about. I think if you take their suggestion of like a 10-to-1 ratio for DP, like just add a 0 at the end, I think that gets you to about what these heroes should be costed anyway.
Right.
And if anything, I've toyed around with it. I don't get to anywhere that it's a really like undercosted hero, unless you are going at, unless you're saying like, I'm going to do a 10 DP hero. Then like for 100 points, you can probably make a hero that's going to be a little bit stronger than 100 points is actually worth. But what from their initial template that they're setting up, you're making either a 200-point hero or a 400-point hero. So if your baseline is you have to make a 200-point hero, I think you're going to make a fair and balanced 200-point hero. And I don't think it's going to be that extraordinary of a thing. And if anything, it's going to be an underpowered hero.
Yeah. So my thought is effectively, or my main question as a TO is going to end up being like, if I add this to our tournament pack, is it going to cause more harm than good? I think ultimately, people want to do this. I think most people want to make up their own stuff and have fun. I think that's really that's really the focus in Age of Sigmar, is more fun than competition, but competition still exists, and it's a thing, and it is a part of the community. Like, that's not going away. Competition's never going away, but the main priority in Age of Sigmar is fun. So like, how do you balance out the fun with the competition? And obviously I understand competition is fun for a lot of people. So the thoughts and ideas that were running through my mind when it came to the rules for Du Bois before we decided to pull the plug because of COVID, the thought was, everybody has the option of making one hero from Apotheosis. They can either be your general at a maximum of 40 DP, or a miscellaneous hero in your list at 20 DP maximum. And my reasonings behind this were, one piece in your army that is custom isn't going to necessarily sway the game. I mean, imagine if you added 6 of these custom heroes, you could do some like really wild things, I think.
Yeah, you could.
But if you're just adding one, it's like maybe you're just filling a small gap in your army, and it shouldn't like completely tilt the game in your favor because of one hero you designed, especially given the rules that exist in the Apotheosis section of the book.
Right.
The other thing, like, 'cause it's baby steps, right? Like, I want to have this in the tournament, but I don't want it to change the tournament in a way that's so drastic that some guy wins the whole event because he built 6 custom heroes that were just absurd.
Right. Like, you want to keep it controlled enough that it doesn't really impact the outcome of the tournament, and people that want to build custom characters are probably going to be on the middle tables.
Right. And then, like, yeah, exactly. But I also want people to have the option because it's fun. And then the other aspect of this is that at Du Bois, we require all the lists be submitted, I think, a month prior to the event, because we like to review every single list that gets sent in and confirm that it complies with the rules. And we like that month buffer to just kind of go back and forth with the players saying, hey, look, you're missing your allegiance, you're missing your this ability here or there associated with your allegiance. You need to pick this before the event. it would be the same aspect with these heroes. But imagine you're doing that, going through that process, and like multiple players have multiple custom heroes. So now I have to take their custom hero and I have to review the custom hero and make sure it falls in line with the points. And if I'm doing that for one hero per player, okay, no big deal. But if I'm doing that like multiple heroes per player, and that would take a considerable amount of time to accomplish. And that's the other aspect of this that I'm thinking about. So I think that going forward, I think you're going to see a lot of events that allow one custom hero. I think that I don't know if they're going to apply that limitation of like, if it's a general, it can be 40, and if it's a regular hero, it can be 20. That's my made up house rule, just to kind of like limit things a little bit, but still allow for players to have fun and customize things. There's one thing I'm not sure about, and it's that these custom heroes, they're not stated as named characters. So another aspect of this that I'm not taking into consideration is all of the artifacts and command traits that could be applied to them in addition to their point values.
Right. That is true. And I think the solution is, like, for any organized event, you just say they're treated as unique.
They're treated as regular units. Yeah. They're treated as named, you're saying?
I think treat them as named so that you don't have to worry about the artifact and command trait interactions.
I'm unsure as to whether or not that's necessary yet. I want to play test it first. I would love to not treat them as named and just give players like full creative responsibility. Just go nuts.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, some stuff can start getting stacked in weird ways with artifacts and traits. You know, somebody's going to find something really broken that you didn't notice.
Right. But like, if you don't let the community do it, you'll never know. Like, you'll never you'll never know how bad it is. Like, what if we just like we're scared of this? I think that's something I do admire about GW, is they're willing to just like try things, and sometimes it's really bad, but they're willing to just like go, all right, we're gonna try this really absurd thing, and the community's like, oh God, please no, and then they do it anyway. Like Bone Reapers with their +1 save across the board. The whole community is just like, this is insane, this is insane, this is insane. And it turns out it's pretty insane. But like they're willing to try these things. And, you know, they do their own playtesting. I'm not so sure it's enough, but like they're willing to try these wild things. And I guess I kind of respect that aspect of their development processes. And I kind of want to see what players will do if they're given the opportunity to go nuts with the artifacts and the command traits. Because let's face it, they've removed, and that's something we are going to talk about pretty soon here. They've removed all of the old artifacts and command traits from Malign Sorcery.
Right.
So it's not as crazy as it used to be. It's a very controlled environment now.
Right.
That's another reason I would.
Is a good segue into match play.
Right.
So let's see where the first new thing actually is in this, going in order. Limitations on the number of endless spells that you can have in your army added to the pitch battle chart. What do you think?
I think this is a direct response to Hallowheart and to Seraphim. Because what happens with Seraphim controls all their own endless spells. And so if you have an army with like Seraphim, they've got some really good casters and they can reliably get their endless spells onto the battlefield, you can have a scenario where they put so many endless spells onto the battlefield that the game becomes difficult to play because they're treated as friendly models, but you can't move through them unless you have flying. So if you dump like tons of endless spells out there, you're you're effectively creating an impassable barrier for your opponent.
Yeah.
And
I know that's how a lot of people were playing Hallowheart.
oh yeah, of course I do it with judgments. That's why that's the thing that like people don't understand about judgments is they're pretty reliable and they limit your opponent's ability to move and position around the battlefield. And
Right.
it's such a big deal. And when you have more than 3 of any of these things, it becomes almost overwhelming. I mean, you could effectively wrap someone's army in endless spells, and in many armies would not be able to function if that happened.
Right. And I completely agree. I think this is a good limitation.
Yes.
Because it just curtails a negative play experience. And those armies, I don't know if they were really like a hyper competitive tournament winning thing, but they were unnecessary to have in there. Most people are running 0 to 3 anyway. So letting people go completely hog wild is just going to kind of create negative play experiences that we don't necessarily need to have.
So I actually don't think this is the first one. The very first one is the Mortal Wound. That's the first change. And that's a big change. And I think it's in that same vein of not so much that aspect of the game getting overwhelming and overpowered, but that limiting the sheer volume of things that can occur and creating negative gameplay experiences. So in this particular case, you were talking about armies that just stacked die rolls upon die rolls upon die rolls, and all of a sudden you were just rolling dice for what seemed forever, and it was just you're sitting across the table watching this guy roll dice to determine like one single outcome for like full minute or 2 minutes, and it just that was not fun. So I think that's what this is. This special rule is designed to mitigate that like arduous dice rolling situation, and I think it's a great thing.
Yeah, like the Vermin Lord Warp Seer could have had 5 saving throws.
Right? Like, how fun is that?
Like, yeah, it's so dumb. Like, it shouldn't be that. Even with this, though, it's only taking 1 out of there.
Right.
It's still 4.
And there was no way to like make that scenario any more. This is the best way to make it more enjoyable, for sure.
Yeah, and it just makes it ward saves again, so we can all unilaterally call them ward saves, not worry about it. It's the same as the old ward save rules. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah. We do have mention on the next page of auxiliary objectives, which is later on.
This is actually a really big deal.
Yeah.
Auxiliary objectives being official now. It's something that we did at Du Bois last year, and we implemented auxiliary objectives in the exact same way they did in this book. Yeah. Where, you know, is it on the next page, the auxiliary objectives?
It's like way at the end.
Okay, well, let's talk about it later then.
Yeah. Let's see. Our scenery table has not changed.
Well, but the scenery rules have changed significantly.
Right. So you want to talk about that?
Absolutely. I have a lot to say about this.
Okay.
So from a TO standpoint, there's always a struggle between trying to find avenues of the game that you can just let players decide for on their own, and then like other aspects of the game where you've got to decide for the players how they should be. And terrain was a big one. Like we would set up all the terrain on every single table and just tell the players like, don't move it. right? But that's all. It's impossible. Like, just as TOs, we're kind of looking for them to not move the terrain to a reasonable degree, but
Right.
it always gets moves like an inch or two between rounds, and then people bump it because they have to put their backpacks on the table, or they move it in between. And nobody knows how it was originally supposed to be set up unless you include like photographs of the terrain and how it's supposed to be set up at every single table. And it's just, terrain management has always been such a huge pain in the butt. But this book addresses it completely. The answers are excellent. So the way terrain is decided is every table should just have 5 pieces of terrain, 3 big pieces and 2 small pieces. Even the size limitations of the terrain are determined in this page. So when I say big pieces, they can be no more than 10 inches across at their widest point and 18 inches tall. This means you'll have a minimum of 3 pieces of terrain that are somewhere between 6 and 10 inches across. If a piece of terrain is 6 or less inches across at its widest point, then it is considered a secondary piece, and you should always have 3 primary and 2 secondary pieces. Every piece of terrain now has a rule associated with it, and in addition to those rules associated with it, you have more rules associated with it depending on the realm that you're playing in. So if, for example, you're playing in Akshi, every piece of the terrain is volcanic, which can be absolute hell, depending on where your units are positioned on the table, because statistically, if every piece of terrain is volcanic, you're going to have explosions occurring on the table somewhere between 5 and 10 times per game, which is awesome to me. I think that's great because it's like, it kind of gives you the whole vibe of Akish. Anyway, so minimum 3 large, 2 small from now on, and every piece of terrain has rules associated with it. Now, the real kicker here is that the players set up the terrain now at the beginning of every single round. So you roll a dice between me and Paul, whatever. Paul wins. Paul gets to pick 1 piece of terrain, throw it on the table wherever he wants, more than 3 inches away from the edge of the battlefield and 6 inches away from any other terrain feature. And we already know what the battle plan is going ahead of this. So now this becomes an extra game within the game. The terrain setup becomes a part of the game. I haven't chosen sides yet. I don't know what side I'm going to be on, but I know what the deployment is. Do I want to like just dump all the terrain into Paul's deployment, or does he want to do that into me and then roll a dice to figure out who gets screwed? I don't know, but it's all part of the game, and I love that. It puts all of the strategy and the terrain deployment into the player's hands, and the TOs don't have to worry about it as much. It does say at events the TOs might set up the terrain beforehand, but as a TO myself, I'd love to place the onus on the players and just extend the round time a little bit.
Yeah, and I think as with everything in here, like I'm probably going to say this a million times throughout the match play section. If players don't like this in their, like if you're playing match play at your local club with one of your friends and you don't like this 5 scenery piece rule, don't play with it. Just do your own thing.
Right. Yeah, you can always agree between you and your opponent. Like the nice thing about this is that if you and your opponent are able to agree on where the terrain should be beforehand, that is effectively the same as rolling off and placing the pieces individually. Because if you both agree, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Yeah. You don't have to go back and forth placing the terrain. It's just some people are going to want to do that. Some people love rules. They love the structure of the rules, and to them that just becomes a game within the game.
Right. That's actually in the original first edition rules. There was a similar setup. You split the board into 6 pieces, and you rolled a D6 or a D3 for each each section of the table for how many terrain pieces it would get, and you alternated players and like where you were placing stuff.
Yep. I mean, I didn't play the original Fantasy, but it sounds very similar.
Yeah. So our generic command abilities stayed the same. Triumphs got cut back down to the original 3, which I think is fine because nobody was using the other 3. I mean, a lot of people just don't use their triumphs to begin with.
Right.
So the only thing that this really, really impacts is veteran overlords. They have 3 less options, but they were only going to use these 3 99% of the time anyway.
One thing's for sure is that like the scenery now has a very serious impact on the way you play. Like especially things like entangling or overgrown, commanding, right. Nullification. All 4 of those things are really big deals. And then the way those types of things get pulled from the scenery table is that upon placement of the scenery, you roll die. You roll a d2 to determine what table you pull from, and then you roll a d6. But it's worded very carefully. Like, you don't know what you're placing on the table when you place it, which is something I love. So you could decide, all right, I'm going to place all the scenery in my opponent's deployment zone. And then all of a sudden, like, their whole deployment zone is arcane. And all of a sudden you're going, oh God, this guy's got a lot of casting units, and
yeah,
this is blown up in my face. Now we're both fighting for that stuff. When we roll dice. So it's all random, and that's great. I love that. I just love it, and it also addresses the issue of like, you could, for example, be in a case scenario, and this is very unlikely, but you could end up in a case scenario where you don't have optimal placement for your alliance scenery,
right?
Because you're both trying to like keep your opponent from maybe like putting their scenery piece in the most efficient position.
Right.
Oh, that's another aspect of this game, is that I guess we'd want to talk about this during the discussion about the realm rules. So I'll save it.
The actual scenery tables, I don't think have changed, correct? This is just the same ones as we had in the last General's Handbook?
They're the same, but I think they're encouraging more use of Table B.
Yeah. I think Table B is more interesting anyway.
Oh, I agree. Table B is all of the things. They're most of the things associated with the realms.
Right. So up next is our scenarios. Knife to the Heart, almost exactly the same as old Knife to the Heart. Might be exactly the same, actually.
Here, I'm gonna have to move real quick because I'm afraid my laptop is dying. But okay. Let me see if I can get into the house without losing cell phone signal.
All right.
I'm on a river.
You're good so far.
Yeah, we'll see.
So anyway, I'll just keep talking about Warhammer while you walk.
Yeah.
Knife to the Heart, I think it just gave us now a clearer way to place the objective markers. Before it was like measuring from the corner rather than from both sides. You had to like figure out the angle being correct. So I think this makes it work a lot better. And I think you're good now. You're a little bit jumpy.
I'm in the house now, but I need to find an outlet.
Oh.
So that's the bigger issue. I know where I can go.
entertaining part of the stream for sure.
Yeah, here. I'm gonna mute myself real quick, and I gotta grab a power cord.
Okay. So, yeah, Knife to the Heart is basically unchanged. You're still winning after the third battle round if you control both objectives. I like that the placement of the objectives is a lot more clear, which is something we're going to see through all of these battle plans. Like, somebody must have complained, and they're like, oh, you're right. These do need to be more clear. So all of the measurements in all of the battle plans are a lot more clear than they used to be. Second on the list is Total Conquest. This is basically the same as old Total Conquest, except now we have the different deployment where each player gets a corner of the map and you have to deploy more than 9 inches away from enemy territory. So you've got 18 inches between you and your opponent. But that's at like the closest point. So you're going to be drawing like a weird arc out of the middle of the board. So I think this one's going to be a little bit of a pain in the ass to set up.
Which one are we talking about?
Total Conquest.
Total Conquest.
That you have to set up more than 9 inches away from enemy territory. And it's like the corners deployment.
I don't think that's going to be a big deal. You just measure from the center of the board 9 inches. It's just a little tiny, like, quarter circle.
Right. Basically, same rules as we've always had, except you get a bonus point for a leader controlling an objective. So any thoughts on this or Knife to the Heart?
One of the things that, like, I never know, is this somewhere in the rules? Who determines the orientation of the book when applied to the table itself? So what
I don't know. I don't know if there's really an answer to that. I mean, these are all symmetrical anyway.
I would like that to be in the rules. Because we find player A, and player A is referenced throughout the course of the book as the player who wins the roll-off when initially, let's see, players, who will be player A? Okay, so you decide who player A is and player B is. When do you determine how the battle plan is laid out on the battlefield? I guess when you choose sides, right?
Yeah. Oh, you know what I think is different about Knife to the Heart too? I think the old one was just corner to corner instead of the like angular deployment that we have here with like a no man's land.
Yeah, I think it was designed like Knife to the Heart.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really like the change that we have the additional point for having a leader there, having like extra ways to get points. It also kind of adds like a catch-up mechanism for some players that might be a little bit behind, or you just leave like your home objective, leave a hero parked there, and now you're getting extra points all the time. So it might make up for not being as strong in board position.
I guess it doesn't matter who it would be player A that determines the side chosen and therefore the orientation of the table as like relative to the age of the
right
of the battle plan. So if I'm player A, I choose one side of the table. I would just flip the book.
Right.
Yeah.
Battle for the Pass. The only thing that I gotta say that I don't like about Battle for the Pass is that it's a hammer and anvil deployment.
I disagree.
I love this mission. This is, I think, the original version of Battle for the Pass is one of my favorite battle plans of all of Age of Sigmar.
Yeah.
I don't like that it's in a hammer and anvil deployment, though. It's better than the stupid hammer and anvil triangle deployment that we used to have.
Is this the only hammer and anvil deployment in the whole book?
I don't know. Let me flip.
No, yes, there's forcing the hand is kind of like a mix.
Yeah.
But it's the only true like horizontal deployment. I guess total conquest doesn't extend your territory. Yeah, it's the only true hammer and anvil.
Right.
In the new book.
Which is interesting. I think they're taking notes that people don't like that because it doesn't work at tournaments.
It doesn't work as well, for sure. But of course, I just roll random dice.
Yeah. You're that guy.
I don't care. It's the dice gods that determine what actually happens and where the battles are fought.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is kind of like an old reliable battle plan that we don't need to go too crazy on, I don't think. Star Strike, we're back to old Star Strike, which is awesome. I think the 2d6 Star Strike was, first of all, a total pain in the ass to figure out where those objectives actually went, like measuring that. And it made them tend to cluster in the middle, which just made for a punch up in the middle of the board.
And every once in a while, you'd roll like an 11 or 12.
Unless you roll boxcars and then everyone's sad.
I had some games in that where like just it was like you were playing Knife to the Heart. And I didn't mind. I actually really enjoyed the whole randomness of it. I know that like tournament players like really appreciate the consistency, but I'm kind of a chaotic tournament player, and I love the just pure think on the fly chaos that map would invoke sometimes. This is still going to be this is actually going to be more chaotic than it was because you're going to have the objectives appear on opposite sides of the battlefield more often.
Yes. And I think that's the key here. I think is that it's the randomness here. They've made it more random. It's going to cluster towards the middle much less often.
Yeah, agreed. Oh yeah.
And our scoring is still the same as it ever was. So 1 point per, like 1 point times the battle round number for controlling the objective.
Yeah, it won't fluctuate as far away from the center anymore, but like it'll be less consistent where it appears, the objectives.
Yep.
It should be really fun. I love that mission. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah. Are we ready for the one that I am totally hyped for?
Scorched Earth?
Scorched Earth with 8 objectives.
So I'm a big fan of this. Like, I think that there should be I love more objectives. It's like it almost equates to more fun for me because it creates more chaos.
Yeah, I think like looking at this scenario, this is where they were like, how are we going to design a scenario that just fucks OBR?
I don't know if it fucks them. It really depends on what OBR list you're playing, but it's certainly more difficult for them.
Yeah, it is. If you have low unit count, this is a very, very challenging mission. And this is basically the same as Scorched Earth from the last General's Handbook, except that one was a hammer and anvil deployment. So this is going back to standard deployment. Everything is measured the same way. And I like the little caveat that we have here that if your opponent has a leader within 6 inches of it, you can't burn the objective. And if you have a leader next to the objective, when you burn it, you get a bonus point.
Oh. You know what's interesting here is that leader units. So like it makes who's the named dog? I can't remember his name.
Karnak?
Karnak, yeah. Karnak, he's not as good in this mission because he's not a leader. He's a
hero. It's not a leader.
Yeah. So like he benefits you for the sake of like buffs, and I think he can use like command abilities. Let me double check. Yeah, he can use command abilities, but he's not a leader for the sake of Scorched Earth.
I've always loved Scorched Earth, and I feel like this is just like the best version of Scorched Earth they've ever made. Let me see on setup. Oh, and you're 9 inches away from enemy territory on setup for this one.
Everything's 18 inches in this one. Like everything. The objectives are all 18 inches from other objectives, and you're 18 inches from your opponent, and everything's 18 inches.
Yeah, that's the other thing that I have not been looking at. Star Strike is 12 inches from enemy territory. Battle for the Pass is 12 inches from enemy territory. Or actually, not 12. It's the 24. Same as if you've got a 24-inch from the back deployment zone.
Right.
Total Conquest is 9 from the enemy territory. Let's see. Knife to the Heart is the weird angular deployment that's like 22.5 inches or something because geometry is weird.
I like all of these things because, so like one of the interesting things about the gray space is they have a significant impact on player brought terrain.
Right.
Because most of the player brought terrain is like within their own territory, they can place it. So, right. Yeah, if you're wondering why, that's a big deal.
Well, it's also a really big deal for Nurgle because you only get the contagion points for your opponent's side of the board when you're in their territory.
Right.
So anything where you have like a no man's land is a nerf to Nurgle.
Like shifting objectives is a big pain in Corn Spot because we can only place our shrine within our territory. Yeah. So it like severely limits the range of our re-rollable prayers and things like that. It's same deal with Nurgle. It makes it more difficult for you to get your contagion point.
Yep. So focal points. I like that this is another one of those maps that they improved the deployment measurements. So the objective markers are going to be in slightly different places than they used to be, but it makes a hell of a lot more sense than trying to get the correct angle on the objective and measuring 18 inches from the center of the board. This basically puts them in the same general vicinity. And scoring is the same, except you score an additional point when you have a monster or behemoth within 6 inches of the objective.
That's really cool.
Yeah. I like that all of these scenarios have some kind of variable to them. Whether they've added something about a leader or a battle line unit or a monster, and then you have like Battle for the Pass that is like, it's like board position that determines how many points you get. Star Strike is variable based on where the things fall down. Most of these have something that like mixes up the scoring in some way.
So one of the things I like about this idea that monsters can get bonus points depending on the mission, or behemoths can get bonus points depending on the mission, is that like in terms of point efficiency, monsters have always been at an inherent disadvantage because of whether it be limited saves, limited wounds, per point spent, a lack of an ability to return models to the field, depreciating profiles. So it's like they have to have some like outrageous ability to make them good, like Gristlegore. or like the like some of like the bloodthirsters are all able to attack in sequence before you do anything with like tyrants of blood, and they're able to attack a second. The last one's able to attack a second time, for example. Like there's always got to be some outrageous advantage to taking them, but I do like that they've added more reasons to run monsters for, even if it's just this mission. I always love that because there's also lots of abilities that are just better against monsters or things with 5 or more wounds.
Right. So next one up is Better Part of Valor. This is another one of my favorite scenarios. And in general, it's basically the same as last year's version, except now the rules for controlling objectives are 3 inches of within 3 inches of the objective marker instead of 6 inches, and the controlling unit has to be battle line.
Right, it has to be battle line. It can't retreat onto an objective, which is key, super important, because that's what a lot of people were doing, was they were just retreating onto objectives in many cases.
Right.
And your unit controls the objective until destroyed. Isn't that correct? Yeah. If you control the unit, only one battle line unit can control an objective at a time. So if you're the first one there, you gain control.
Yeah, but if the battle line unit is not within 3 inches or it's destroyed, you lose control of the objective.
Right. So you actually have to be removed from the objective to actually lose control.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah, and this, again, this is another one of those scenarios that's really good for certain armies and really bad for other armies.
Oh, yeah.
Because some armies are like, I'm going to run minimum battle line.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like
me.
KO is going to have a problem with this scenario because they're running like 3 battle line all the time.
Right.
Same with OBR. They're going to have a lot of trouble with this. They're going to have to do some math at some point of when they raise the objectives in their own territory and run at their opponent.
I do like how they've added an excerpt in each of these for the battle length. I don't know if you've noticed that, but they now say until the amount of time allocated for the battle has run out. They don't even specify time. They're getting really good at writing these rules. It's like until the amount of time allocated runs out. Now it's in the battle plan, and I love that.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So we can't have any more of this stupid stuff that happens where people at the end of the round speculate like, oh, well, I was going to do this and then that would happen and then this would happen. Like, no, we don't do that stupid shit anymore. When time runs out, dice down, you're done.
It's done. Yeah.
And it's in the rules that you do that.
Right. And all the battle plans are designed in such a way. I think even Knights to the Heart designed that way. Oh, the auxiliary objectives play into this, by the way, because the auxiliary objectives, if you're able to complete them before the time runs out, you get that minor victory.
Right.
So big play into like the whole time allocation thing, because in the past, one of the major reasons you needed to allocate like extra time to complete a battle round or whatever was because there were no auxiliary objectives. And that was actually one of the things I sought to rectify at Du Bois when I had my multiple secondary and primary objectives that the players chose, was to rectify the win or loss based on time allocation. So you could complete those objectives and get the win.
Right.
Even if time ran out.
Yeah. So our next battle plan, shifting objectives, a little bit tighter deployment zone than last year's version. And at least I think it is. I don't remember. Maybe this was like this before. But you're setting up 12 inches from enemy territory, basically, setting up at the 12-inch line, and scoring and the general scenario work the same as they previously did, except you get 1 extra point for holding the objective with a battle line unit,
which is cool. I love the enforcement of the battle line units and the extra points allocated for battle line units.
Right.
I think that like armies like let's see, are the Terrorgeist battle line in FEC?
In Gristlegore they are.
In Gristlegore they are. So what it's going to do is it's going to stop you from being as aggressive as you would like to be with your giant monsters.
Yeah, this one is going to be really good though for OBR, because then you just take your 3 bricks of Mortec Guard and head for the objectives.
Rob Snyder, go figure. Makes a comment. I'm thinking of the movie actor. Chess clocks are going to be more prevalent. What do you think about that? Do you think that it'll be a common thing?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't like chess clocks. I'm an anti-chess clock person.
The problem I have with the chess clocks is like some armies just take longer to play. And
right.
if you like Tzeentch is a great example of like a really annoying army to play on a timer, because you're constantly picking up and putting down all these stupid horrors, and it takes so much time. But I don't know how to fix that problem. I just don't know.
And it's a nerf to armies that don't need a nerf. Like it nerfs Gits. Like if they're moving around like 120 models, like that's a problem if they're gonna have if you're gonna have a chess clock situation. So I don't think it really I think it's going to be a natural balancing thing where some armies take a little more time, some armies take a little less time, and like I don't feel like it's necessary.
I don't know if it's necessary at this point. I don't know if the AOS community is as competitive. I don't think they have that same level of competition that they do in the 40K community, and I don't know if I ever want it to be that way. Like the Frontline Gaming 40K community, where they're like having chess clocks and tapping back and forth. I understand why you do it. It makes sense. It's just the missions now are being designed so that if you run out of time, it's not a big deal.
Right. All right, so Places of Arcane Power is up next. This is another one of those where we have like the 2 boxes in the corner deployment, and you deploy more than 9 inches from enemy territory. And what's interesting is the objectives are basically in the center of the no man's land zones. So you have to move, other than the center objective, you have to move a lot to get to the objectives.
Yeah, it's more than a foot.
Right. And then each player scores victory points at the end of their turns for each objective they control. The number of points equal to the number of turns the player has controlled the objective, which is basically, I think that's how this one's always worked.
And it's leaders. Leaders have to control the objectives now. I'm pretty sure, yeah. Instead, a player controls an objective if a leader. So yeah. It's no longer anything but leaders.
Yeah, that's going to be bad for some armies.
Yeah.
I mean, how many armies are running around with a bunch of 5 wound foot heroes?
A lot.
A lot.
I like how each one of these things presents like a completely different challenge or bonuses depending on what armory you play.
Right. I'm sure this one's going to be pretty good for Khorne.
No, we don't want to have our leaders on the objectives.
Our leaders are leaders, aren't they?
Yeah, but they're not. I mean, that you've got one killy hero leader, and since they've taken away a lot of the artifacts, you don't want to be running like the Khorne Demon Prince is not quite as good. So I don't know. You might take those points that you would normally allocate towards that Khorne Demon Prince and like make up your own hero. I don't know what the answer is for Khorne in that regard. I really want to get Archaon. I think Archaon's really good right now for Khorne.
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
He's a leader.
So our next scenario is the Blade's Edge. This is one of our totally new scenarios. So we are setting up 12 inches from enemy territory. Our objectives, there's 6 objectives, and they are jammed into the middle of the table.
I love it.
Yeah, they're 12 inches away from each other. Like across the table, they're 12 inches away from each other, and then 18 inches sideways. And let's see.
Look at how the players remove objectives. So the player taking the second turn removes an objective from play.
Yeah.
At the start of each battle.
That's very interesting.
And that starts at the very first battle round.
Yeah. So the player that goes second immediately has an advantage.
Right, and if you take a double turn, you go back to being at a disadvantage.
Right. Like that this is one of the best design scenarios I think they've ever made.
I can see this one making a lot of people really angry.
Yeah. And I mean the removing an objective, not burning an objective, removing a selected objective. Like there's so much strategy in that. It's not necessarily even just remove the one that your opponent is most easily going to grab. You can like take an objective off to bait them in another direction.
What's other thing that's interesting about this one is the most points are going to be scored in the first and second rounds, and then after that, the point reduction goes down. And by the time you hit the 5th round, there's only one objective potentially because the player it is an option to remove an objective, but. If I'm going second, like I'm gonna do it every time just for fun. Forget it. I'm doing it. I'm ripping this objective out.
And first battle round, leaving the objectives there is an interesting peace offering to your opponent.
Why would you do that?
To fuck with their head. Why?
Who cares? You get to do something. Just do it for fun.
But the look on your opponent's face when you're like, no, I'm not going to remove one. Like that's doing something ridiculous and fun too.
But they're going to remove stuff in the next round unless you get to roll the double. I would probably take the middle objective on their side.
Yeah.
And force them to split if they want to control an objective early on, and then just start I don't know, then just attack one half of their army.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's going to split your army too, because you have to.
Why would it split my army? Like I am going to go for 2 objectives and tackle their half of the board.
Right.
I might just avoid taking take a garbage unit and grab 1 point.
I mean, this also makes the deployment game really interesting.
Oh yeah, and the placement of terrain.
Yeah.
What the hell?
This is going to be like there's going to be so much time invested in the strategy of this at like the top tables of tournaments. This is like one of those scenarios that you put on like round 5.
Really?
Like, okay, guys, who's really the better player now?
That's a decision. That's a decision the dice gods must make.
Yeah. I'm saying if you're the kind of person that designs their scenario, their tournament pack instead of just letting the dice decide like a lunatic,
it's not lunacy. It's the rules.
Technically, it is. Technically, it is.
It's the rules. Don't be mad at me. Be mad at GW.
So the appropriate thing is just to be mad at GW like
all the time. Just always be angry with GW because those are the decisions they've made. Like it drives me crazy, dude. It's like and I know I hate making a comparison between Magic the Gathering and Games Workshop, but in the sense that like it's just a game, it's like being mad at the TO because they told you to play the game by the rules. That's it. Like, go complain to the company that made the game.
Yeah, that really is. That's a good out as a TO. Like, nobody can really yell at you for designing a rules pack a certain way if you're just doing exactly what GW tells you to do.
Right, and that's kind of the approach I take. And of course, there are some things that are out that like GW just hasn't made rules for. And that's a big reason I love this book, because they say the battle length, that's a really big deal. Or the terrain placement rules, that's a really big deal from the perspective of a TO. And it's just like, oh my God, I don't have to deal with that headache anymore. That's so nice. Like,
yeah,
if I follow the rules that GW has set, and of course we're going to play test them first. It's not like are they functional? Like last General's Handbook, the rules for like terrain placement were insane. Like they didn't make any sense. The tables were like exactly where the terrain should be placed. Like that.
Yeah.
It was so bad that like it didn't take into account like player allegiance based terrain, and I hated that thing. It didn't make any sense. These rules, I'm reading them, I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Like, oh, we can actually do that in a tournament, and it's not like completely dysfunctional. People can actually understand and follow these rules without wasting 25 minutes to a half an hour on terrain placement. Like, you get 5 minutes to do that. Just get it done.
Yep. So our next scenario is total commitment.
Yeah.
Diagonal deployment. All of the objectives are 6 inches from the board edge. Score 1 point for one in your own territory, 3 points for one in your opponent's territory. Usual no reserves rule. Deploy 9 inches from enemy territory. I think this is basically exactly the same as last General's Handbook.
I think the scoring is a little bit different. I would say Idnith would love this, but there's no reserves.
Yeah. Well, I mean, those eels are still fast.
They're fast.
Yeah. I mean, this is like, well, now we're getting to a place where like this doesn't just punish Stormcast. Like we have enough other armies that want to do this that maybe it really is a reasonable thing to say no reserves.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, like for Nurgle, it makes Gutrot Spume not work. Like
right.
that's a big deal.
You just
that's like 140 points down the hole if you have this scenario in a pack.
Look at Grizzlegore. Like, no, Grizzlegore doesn't have reserves. They're summoned units. It's different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, I bet you they would love this map.
Yeah.
Because everything comes in off the board edge, doesn't it?
Yeah. 6 inches from the footage.
Oh, you're not there anymore? Pop! I know Scar Bloodrath loves this map.
Yeah.
So
this makes for a really hard slog of a game. You have to get really far to get to your opponent's objectives.
Ranged units love this map. Is it typical
KOs
control or is it no reserve? It's typical control, so you maintain control for as long as even if a unit dies, it doesn't have to sit on the objective.
Right. But I mean, KO is going to absolutely love this because they've only got 2 objectives to clear. They just leave a hero behind on their own and just go guns blazing on one objective.
They don't have to leave anyone behind.
They would, because they would have to. You control the objective at the end of the battle round.
Right, but in the sense, you wouldn't have to leave them behind for successive battle rounds. Is what I'm saying.
Right.
Yeah, that's a really good. I like this mission. This is a very simple mission.
Yep. So then our next new one is Forcing the Hand, which is also
totally new.
Yeah, this is totally new. The really interesting thing here is, it's that weird step deployment, which is fine. I'm not like a huge fan of the step deployments, but like whatever. Like they're very similar to diagonal deployments. And so each player picks one of their opponent's objectives to be the primary objective for that battle round. And the player controlling a primary objective scores 3 points. And all of the other objectives are worth 1.
This is worded a little weird.
It is. At the start of each player's turn, the opposing player picks one of their own objectives to be the primary objective for that turn. Okay, so
then in that case, the opposing player is setting the primary objective, and you're going for it if you want the 3 points, if you gain control of it at the end of your turn.
Right.
So, like, this is I'm playing you, Paul. Paul, it's your turn. My objective over here on the other side of the map that I don't think you could possibly get, that's my primary objective.
Right.
But if you're somehow able to take it from me, you're able to get 3 points. That's interesting.
Right.
And then the primary objective changes from player turn to player turn. So there's only ever one, and it's always based on your opponent's decision. It's really what it comes down to.
And the interesting thing for the first battle round is there's only one primary objective.
Yes. Well, no. It happens at the beginning of each player's turn.
Right. So it happens at the beginning of each player's turn.
Right.
So you're not assigning at the start of your turn, your opponent assigns one of their objectives to be primary. Right. So at the top of the first battle round, there's only one primary objective on the table, not 2.
There is none. You don't control any. You can only pick objectives that your opponent owns. So at the start of the first battle round, no one owns anything.
No, it's talking about player A objective versus player B objective, if you look at the map.
Oh, okay, I understand.
Yep.
Yeah, so at the start, you always pick one.
Yeah.
So you're always okay. So
it disincentivizes.
So it's not the objectives that you control. It's the objectives in your territory.
Yeah.
That you decide will be the primary objective.
Right.
Got it. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. I'm glad we looked over this because I was so confused. I thought it was like I get to pick any objectives that I control.
Right. And so this also, like, for the top of the first battle round, it is like you have no incentive to just sit back. Like your incentive is to attack the primary objective.
I like that.
Because you
And
can't.
one of the biggest problems with this game, at least the last rendition of it, was that a lot of the more defensive armies had just a flat out inherent advantage in every case scenario.
Yeah.
So you had
turn 1, you can't just sit and score 5.
Well, what was that one where it was like, if you were Hearthguard Berserkers or OBR going first, and you just sprint to the objective and you just sat there, you just win. Forget the name of it. It was the one where there was 2 objectives, and there were like you start in 2 corners. Oh God, why can't I?
Oh, it was Duality of Death.
Duality of Death. That was
one of the ones they got rid of.
I hated that.
Yeah,
because I could table my opponent by round 5, and they just win because they control the objectives for 3 rounds prior, and their army is just very hard to kill.
Right. So I definitely like forcing the hand. I think this is going to be like the choosing of which objectives are worth more points is going to be another one where it puts a lot more strategy into what you're doing. And you could be just playing strictly defensively. You could bait your opponent in a certain direction.
Yep. Yeah, it puts a lot of emphasis on player-based decisions. And that's one of my big loves about that's the main thing I love about the new General's Handbook is there's all these like really difficult player decisions that you'll have to make in these missions when you're placing hey, what's up, Lich King? There's a lot of difficult player decisions that you have to make in the middle of the battle, and they I'm just really looking forward to it.
Yeah. Yep. So that is all of these scenarios. And then we get to meeting engagements. Do we really want to go over meeting engagements?
I don't care about meeting engagements. I think this is the only thing I don't really care about. I played a couple of them. You know, they're kind of fun. I played at least 5 or 6 meeting engagement games from the last GHB. But to me, it's weird. Like they make meeting engagements make some units so much better than in regular gameplay because of the way they come in at different turns.
Right.
And I don't know. I'm not crazy about meeting engagements. I understand why they exist. They definitely create a shorter game, but I don't know. It's okay. They're okay.
I think the one thing that would dramatically help meeting engagements is if they took the Warcry deployment rules where you have specific places on the board, not just board edges, where your units can start.
Well, the movement in meeting engagements is just as fast as movement in AOS. It's a little different.
Right. But I'm talking about like just the Warcry concept where you have like your I forget. It would be what, spearhead in meeting engagements?
Dagger, shield.
Yeah, spearhead. Yeah, your spearhead, if your spearhead deployed somewhere on the battlefield instead of on a board edge,
right?
I think that would accelerate meeting engagements so that it's not just whoever has the units with the best movement wins.
You've got to plan when you're in a meeting engagement. You've got to like plan for your units coming in off specific board edges. Like you know where they're coming in off of, and at which points of the game they're coming in. So I don't know. Meeting engagements are they're so imbalanced and weird that you almost have to communicate with your opponent exactly what you're bringing and in what groups.
Yeah. Yeah.
We did go over the 80, 90, and 100 point hero models that can cast a spell and have an extra command point. So here's the thing, Rob, with the extra command point, it's 50 points to add an extra command point. So it's effectively the same cost as an extra command point would be in your list anyway.
Yep.
So you're basically you're bringing this extra hero, and let me take a look at the ruling on the extra command point. So it's DP5 at the start of the first battle round. You receive extra command point for 50 points. So you're effectively spending 100 points for 2 command points at the beginning without a battalion, 2 extra ones. So you end up with 3 rather than just their standard 50 for 2. One second, my wife was talking.
Yeah. Anyway, meeting engagements was the real thing that we were just talking about. Most of the rest of this is basically pretty much the same as, a regular match play game, other than, you're starting on board edges instead of somewhere within. Another thing that could fix it too is having it not be within 3 inches of the board edge and have it be within like 9 inches of the board edge or something like that.
So, okay, the issue with let me reiterate this. I was jumping to Rob Snyder's question about like custom heroes, because he asked a custom hero question in chat.
Yeah.
And my wife had asked me something about dinner. So as far as the 100 point models that can cast extra spells and have an extra command point, I don't think they're that big of a deal. They don't really bother me that much. With regard to meeting engagements, the primary issue with meeting engagements is that Age of Sigmar rules are designed around you having all of your stuff on the board at the same time. Like that's
yeah.
And so you've got this massive army like moving against another massive army, and the for all intents and purposes, the balance of the game is really summed up around the 2,000 point range.
Right.
On a 6x4 table. So you have meeting engagements. You're introducing a mechanic where like you have groups of units entering the battlefield at different points in time, and they have varying levels of power. And if you've got fast units that do a lot of damage, you can just effectively like gobble up each one of your opponent's groups really quick before they get the rest of their stuff into play and just win. And it creates a really unbalanced game. And if you want to balance it out, you almost have to talk to your opponent before starting the game and talk to them about exactly what you're bringing, exactly like kind of game you intend to play. And it's not that I'm not interested in doing that. It's just like you're almost like planning out. It's like it's just too much planning for me to want to participate. Now,
yep.
With regard to Rob's question about the hero models, there's no limit on hero customization and spamming of heroes that will introduce more command points as well as additional spells. The heroes that are customizable, I don't think they're as point efficient as, like, say, a faction's pre-existing mages. And the spells aren't necessarily as good as a faction's pre-existing mages. And you actually have a limit to how many heroes you can take. You can only take a maximum of 6. And my thoughts on that as a TO would be to limit the number of custom heroes you can bring to 1, a 40-point hero if it's your general, or a 20-point hero if it is not. Paul seems to think that it's okay to it's good to put the stipulation that the character you create is named. And I tend to think that because they've removed all of the sorcery stuff, artifacts and realm artifacts and all that, I think it's fine if you just leave them not named, but I'm a little riskier, I guess.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm not a big fan of meeting engagements. I think that they're unbalanced, and I don't want to take the time to like figure out exactly what I'm going to play with my opponent. I think part of the fun is not knowing what's coming to the battlefield.
Yep. So the next section is Pitch Battle Coalition of Death. So this is just giving us more multiplayer rules, but this is more like tournament-oriented multiplayer rules, clarifying some things.
Big-
I like that they're including this and codifying some of this. And some of this is actually just really generally good. Like the coalition matrix, this I think is going to work well in like non-pitch battle coalition of death games too, or match play or whatever you want to call it. Like this is almost better in narrative play. This is a very narrative sort of chart where certain alliances are going to not work as well with the people on your team. You okay over there?
Yeah, I am fine. I think we're skipping ahead a little bit because we're already starting to talk about the coalition matrix when we've got all sorts of great things that have just been added to coalition to begin with.
Okay,
so
go for it.
It's officially been decided that each player commands the models of their army, blah, 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 but you can't use the same faction allegiance, and you can't bring grand alliances. That's a big deal, because you saw that in a lot of events where, I'm playing Legion of Death, and I'm playing Death. It's like, all right, whatever. You're playing the same thing.
Yeah.
And you've got same faction cannot be picked more than once for coalition. We just talked about that. Unique units can no longer be included more than once. So you can't have two people running Gotrek. That's official.
Yeah, and that's an interesting narrative element.
Right, and I think that the coalition of death rules are. It's like one-on-one is more of a. I don't want to sit there and say AOS is a very serious tournament game because I don't think it is. It's like it is a tournament game. It can be a match play game, but first and foremost, it is a fun game to play. And Coalition of Death, I think, amplifies that to an even greater degree, and it addresses a lot of the problems associated with trying to create a format for four people to play at the same table, 2-on-2. And then the other one that they've made official is generals and warlords. So both players have a general, but one person is considered to be the warlord. And if at any time a group of players cannot decide on what actions to carry out, the warlord has the final say. So he can just be like, no, we're doing it this way.
Yeah. Every team has a team captain.
Right, exactly. And you're able to discuss things with your team captain, but ultimately it's your warlord's decision to make something happen. So pick who you play with wisely. Don't just play with anybody. If you find your buddy's really bossy and it's a pain in your ass, obviously you don't want to play with that person. Let's see, or you want to help him remedy that issue. Any victory conditions from a battle plan that apply to the army's general are also specific to the warlord's general. So all that is officially defined, which is what I love about these rules. As a TO, I don't have to sit there and write a massive team packet anymore because it's official, and that is so helpful to me. Anyway, now we're at the coalitions.
Yep. The coalition matrix. I love that Skaven have a fractious coalition with themselves.
Yes. But why don't you go over the different types of coalitions that can occur and how they might impact the game before we...
So if you have a battle-forged coalition, it's no restrictions, nothing different. Fractious coalition, you don't receive a command point in the first battle round. And Desperate Coalition, you don't receive a command point in the first battle round. And when making normal moves, you treat units in other players' armies that are part of your coalition as enemy units.
That's
so
a
you
big
have to stay more than 3 inches away from them.
Right. So you're heavily restricted in movement when it comes to playing with a coalition that might be very good strategically, but you are penalized because your armies are not happy with one another.
Yeah. Right.
Endless spells. Okay, so this is another big one. If one player has brought an endless spell, the other only wizards. So only wizards in that player's army can cast it. I wonder if that is a unique unit, an endless spell. No, endless spells are not considered to be unique units unless they say so in the rules book. But
Yeah.
I'm wondering off the top of my head, if an endless spell is a unique unit, then that would mean that only one player can take one of each endless spell. So, for example, you couldn't have two Geminids on the table at any given moment in time.
Yeah. I don't think they're unique, though.
Okay. I don't
You're
think
only
they are.
allowed to take one in your own army, but I don't think that
Right.
makes them unique in general.
Right. So theoretically, this is like an exception where you could have like both players bring 3 endless spells and just like cast 6 endless spells.
Yep.
Although that would be very difficult to manage at 1,000 points.
Yeah. So the coalition matrix is really, I think, very interesting. Generally you have either Battle-Forged coalition or Fractious coalition with everybody in your Grand Alliance.
Oh, I take it back. You can. The endless spells are tied to the pitch battle chart. So at Vanguard, you'd only be able to take 2.
Ah.
Yeah. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so generally, most of your Grand Alliance, you're going to have Battle-Forged coalitions with the exception, I think, of Order, which there's a bunch of Fractious coalitions in Order, but all of Death seems to work with each other just fine. All of Destruction works with each other just fine. And then in Chaos, Skaven is Fractious with everybody, and then only the opposing Chaos gods are Fractious with each other. All the rest is Battle-Forged. And then basically it looks like the no coalition possible is basically just Order and Chaos just won't work together.
Yeah, you can't even take them.
Yeah.
In a 2-player game. That's something that I also thought was interesting. Is they just flat out said, you can't take Slaves to Darkness and Stormcast Generals. They will not work together. So
Yeah.
if you have no Battle-Forged, Fractious, or Desperate Coalition, you just can't take the armies together, which is another interesting thing. So to consider when going to a doubles tournament with one of your friends.
Yeah, and Fire Slayers have a bunch of Desperate coalitions with Chaos.
Yes.
They'll align with anybody except Gloomspite, Gitz, and Skaven. Gloomspite Gitz also have a lot of Desperate coalitions.
So do Skaven.
So do all of Death have a lot of Desperate coalitions. Skaven has a lot of Fractious coalitions.
Right.
And then and then all of Order they can't do anything with. Like even the Fire Slayers won't work with them.
Yeah, the Gloomslate gets only work with like other Destruction Alliance.
Yep.
Sons of Bahamut are like almost entirely Fractious or helpful. Like they seem to not care who you're aligned with.
Yeah. That's interesting. I'm very curious to see what's going to be in that book.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be a fun army.
Yeah. All right. Anything else on Coalition of Death?
I'm good. I think Coalition of Death is a 10 out of 10. Great addition. I didn't expect it to be in here, and it's one of the many reasons I review this book so high.
Yeah. Basically getting like tournament rules for multiplayer. Like that is very good. Now we can have like actual, like we can have doubles tournaments, and we don't have to make up a rules pack. We
Not
have
only
something
that,
set already.
the doubles tournament in some ways can be like a primary event.
Yeah, exactly. I like that a lot. I think that's going to become more of a thing, and I would love to see more of it. So up next, we have the Realm of Battle rules, which has rustled a lot of people's feathers.
Not mine.
I agree. So one of the things right off the rip is that they're saying that you can no longer use the artifacts from malign sorcery.
Or the spells, right?
Well, and you're not using any of the realm rules from
Yeah, it's like the artifacts,
sorcery.
the spells, nothing.
Basically they're retiring malign sorcery with this.
Right.
Hot take on that real quick. Go.
I love it. It was such a pain in my ass. At the TO, it's the biggest pain in your butt. It's like everyone's trying to find some like arbitrary way to bust the few broken artifacts in that book. And like I think most of the problems that I saw in AOS, like most of these armies that were really busted, were because of those artifacts. They just, I don't know how to explain. That's the best way to put it. Because of those artifacts, because like Nagash was absolutely insane because he had all those spells all the time.
Yeah.
Now, yeah. I definitely, this is a huge nerf to things like Nagash or Ark in the Black.
Yep.
Even like Lord
things
Croak.
That need to be nerfed.
Yeah, I need to play more games before I see how it impacts the game as a whole. I think having that massive list of artifacts you could take, it's just like an uncontrollable amount of exploitation. Every time they come out with a book, they have to like review the existing artifact list to make sure that they didn't write any cool rules that would like not play nice with the original artifacts.
Right. And there were things in there that were written with the old wording of like, if a hit of 6 does a thing, it was always 6+. So yeah, Sword of Judgment. There were some things that could like do the D6 mortal wounds on a 4. Like it was
it would hit on a 2 with rerolling 1s.
Yeah.
D6 mortal wounds, and you could just run into anything and just be like, I attacked twice with like 8 attacks, and it's 8d6 mortal. Your thing is dead. Just get it out of here. And then I'll pile in again and kill the next thing because I have a 6-inch pile in from my Bloodthirster, and it was total bullshit. It just like it was really good. I loved it. It was very fun for me. But you know, when you're playing against that, it's like, well, that shouldn't exist. And I agree, it shouldn't. But we're playing a tournament, so I'm using it.
Yeah. And I think I'm going to go in a narrative direction for a second, that some of those artifacts didn't make any narrative sense.
Right. I completely agree with that.
Like, I understand the Ethereal Amulet was a strong piece for some armies. Like, and it was a strong piece for armies that had weak artifacts. I will give you that. It does not make any sense for a Maw Crusher to be ethereal. You do not have a ghost Maw Crusher.
Right. But of course everyone did that.
Yeah. And I think it's pulling the generic feeling of stuff out of the game by doing this. This is really forcing you to play the artifacts that are in your book so that you're not just picking from this generic list of stuff. Like that was one of those things about like 8th edition that made it so like unflavorful. Like there were a bunch of good artifacts that everybody put on their important heroes, and that was it. Like in every hero was basically built out the same way. And so in so many occasions, like if you had a big tanky monster, you almost always put an ethereal amulet on it. And like that for me just feels wrong. That doesn't seem like the way it was intended to be designed.
Yep.
And as far as the rest of the realm rules, I think they have been dramatically simplified. And I think that is a very, very good thing. I think they were just way too complicated and overwhelming before. I think these realm rules, people are actually going to play with. The other realm rules in a casual game, nobody ever does. Unless a TO told you to take those, people were generally not using them as far as I could see.
Yeah, I hear you.
Now we have one spell, one command, one realmscape feature, one artifact. All of the artifacts are fairly weak. All of the magic is basically fair, like because everybody gets it, and you can only cast it once a turn. And most of them are not doing anything all that crazy. Your realm commands, again, like everybody gets it and affects everybody in pretty much the same way. I don't think there's too many in here that are really going to be abusable by anybody.
Well, they're all very well written. So like they all include
Yes.
the caveat that this ability, the same unit cannot benefit from this ability more than once per phase.
Right.
For example, Blazing Fervor. I think the big thing about the realms are the realmscape features.
Yes, because they're all very flavorful to the realm, and they all have an impact, but not a massive impact.
A
couple of them do.
I think that all right, one thing you have to understand is that when they say terrain features, so that refers to every terrain feature, including the ones that you place down as a player. So in the realm of Akish, every Skaven tunnel that is on the board is now volcanic.
Yeah.
So,
which is really funny. Or when if your Slan is garrisoned inside the pyramid, a volcano can erupt inside it.
Exactly. And so it's these realmscape features apply to the player brought terrain as well as the terrain that's on the table. So you have 5 pieces of terrain minimum, usually 6 or 7, because most factions at this point have a terrain feature. And so
that are bringing multiple, like Deepkin and Skaven, and then Nurgle can put more on the field.
Right. So just imagine volcanic terrain. You're rolling 6 dice. At minimum, there's 5 pieces of terrain, but there's at least one extra one in most cases for the player brought terrain. So minimum 6 dice. That means one piece of terrain is likely to explode on every single player's turn.
Yep.
So it's almost like in the realm of Akish, you're never safe. The volcanoes are constantly erupting. And you know what? Sometimes you're just going to take D3 mortal wounds.
Yeah. It's D3 mortal wounds, but sometimes that's going to take down your general.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to kill your guy and you're going to lose that objective. And it's just going to be the way it is because it's the realm of fire. And and I love that. I love that about the realm of Akish. It's a very chaotic, explosive place, and the realmscape features reflect that.
I'm just gonna flip back real quick to
the different
tables.
types of terrain.
Yeah, the terrain tables, so that because I can't remember what all of these things are. My brain is broken. So
it's on a 6+. You take D3. Every unit within 1 inch takes D3 mortals. It might be 3.
It's D3.
Well, no, it's D3. It might be 3 inches.
No, it's 1 inch.
It's 1 inch. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So high points on these. Akshi is just a fireball. Everything is volcanic. You get exploding 6s for an artifact, and your realm command is +1 to run in charge.
Which is pretty good overall. Yeah. That's really good, especially if you're something like Nurgle with your tree.
Yep. Getting an extra +1 to run in charge is pretty good.
Exactly.
I will gladly have my Blight Kings running 8.
Right.
Shamon. Our spell is +1 to save.
That's really good.
Our Realmscape feature is Entangling, which
that's rough. I played a test game with that. If every single piece of terrain subtracts 2 from run and charge rolls, so like there are to a minimum 0, there are scenarios where like you just charge 0.
Yeah.
It makes a charge so that like you'll position your unit around a piece of terrain so that way if your like opponent tries to get to you, they have to deal with this terrain. And so they need 5 to get to you.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's definitely interesting. I'm not sure what makes that thematically Realm of Metal.
The Realm of Metal, it's like all these like shards of metal and stuff like twisted and hanging off of the environment.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then our artifact makes you immune to Rend 1.
I think it's pretty good. That's your new ethereal if you want it.
That's legitimately not bad. Like some people are complaining about this, like because it's like, well, it's not reducing all Rend by 1. Not a lot of stuff has Rend 2 or better.
Right.
So let's be real. That is basically your ethereal amulet.
Well, in addition, you not only reduce the Rend characteristic by 1 to a minimum 0 for Rend 1, but you also have a spell that adds to your save rolls. So like, you're not ethereal, but you can add to your saves now. And this stacks with, for example, if you make a custom hero, you've got that command ability that just automatically gives you a save roll of 1. So like +2 to your save and pretty easily +2 to your save with a chance with ignoring Rend of 1. Like that's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's effectively the same. I mean, you got to jump through a few more hoops, but whatever.
And then our realm command is +1 to hit for melee weapons.
I think that's great.
Yeah, that's solid.
That's like super powerful. Since when has every army in the game got access to +1 to hit? Like that's primarily it's like a corn thing.
Yeah, and a lot of like Free Guild gets a lot of that. Cities of Sigmar in general gets a lot of +1 to hits too.
Yeah. Oh, that's savage.
Yep. Gur, Realm of Beasts. Our spell adds 2 to run and charge rolls.
That's really good.
That's strong. That's gonna make the whole game faster.
All the scenery is deadly, which is fitting because like the realm of beasts is full of like large man-eating plants.
Yep. And if you finish a normal move or charge move within 1 inch of a deadly terrain feature, you roll a d6 on a 1. you suffer D3 mortal wounds.
Right.
So, I mean, you can just avoid terrain features.
It's going to be difficult because it's going to be part of your terrain as well. So, Skaven terrain, the Mycorn altar, like it's all. That's what people I think are missing with these Realmscape features. Is it's all terrain features. This includes your stuff, dude.
Yeah.
So, that's it.
And I think this makes Nurgle more interesting because you're throwing another terrain feature down on the board that already has the, like, when you're within 3 inches of it on a 4-up, you take a mortal wound. And now it has whatever Realmscape feature.
On a 1+, they take D3.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. I love it.
Our Realm artifact is reroll charges.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. I wouldn't pick it, but that's fine. They don't all have to be good.
But this command ability.
Pick one friendly monster until the end of the battle round. You treat it as having 0 wounds on its damage table.
Seems good.
That's good.
Give me that card.
You only need that like once to really be effective.
Yeah, that's pretty solid. I like it.
Gyran, Realm of Life. Your spell is Shield of Thorns. When your opponent ends a charge move within 3 inches, that unit that's charging takes D3 mortal wounds.
I don't think the terrain feature here is that effective.
Healing. On a 6, you heal D3. Some armies, like, they're not going to have anything but heroes that can heal like that.
Well, I believe it might return models. I got to take a look.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, it's just healing wounds, not models.
Right. But you know what? If you have multiple pieces of terrain within 1 inch, which can happen because they're 3 inches apart, and a lot of these heroes, which just means you have to have a base at least greater than 1 inch for that to occur potentially, right?
Yep.
You can be rolling 2, and in some cases with a very large base, up to 3 dice to determine whether or not you gain life. So roll 3 dice potentially if you got a very large monster, and see if you can heal D3 mortal wounds. It's not bad. But it's not very impactful like the other ones.
Yep. Your Realm artifact, you heal 1 wound a turn.
Mm-hmm.
And then our Realm command, when all of your heroes can tap to cast Shield of Thorns. If they're not a wizard, if you're a wizard, they can use the command ability to cast Shield of Thorns in addition to any other spells they already have.
Shield of Thorns is okay. It doesn't strike me as this is definitely one of the weaker, less relevant realms, and I have a feeling you'll see this in a lot of events because like it doesn't impact the game very much, and like players want that round where the game is just not like a whirlwind of chaos. And I know I like that, but not a lot of people do.
Yeah. All right, Heish, Realm of Light, are magic. You reroll save rolls of 1, so it's another Mystic Shield.
Yeah, cares.
Same casting value.
It doesn't matter.
Shield. Realmscape feature, everything is mystical, so you get a 6-up ward. Everybody
has a death save.
Yeah, this is terrible for every army in the Death Grand Alliance.
Yeah, this is like the one you don't want to play against your death. Your magic powers are now everyone else's.
Yeah. Your artifact, reroll hits of 1 in melee.
Yeah. Whatever. There's better stuff in like every faction.
Yeah. Command ability. You don't apply a cover modifier to the save for attacks that are made by that unit. So it ignores enemy cover.
Right, which it can be useful, but I bet you in some games it'll have some mild impact, like you're playing against Stormcast and one of their heroes is on a hill. You're playing any army where the hero is on a hill, you're like, you know what? I want this guy to die. Ignore his cover save.
Yep. Definitely.
What's weird is the timing. It's
the interesting thing to note here is that for Deepkin on their first turn, when they're +1 to save turn, it actually technically reads as everything is treated as if it's in cover.
Oh, so it might be good against Deepkin.
Yep.
So the other thing is, it's done at the beginning of the hero phase. So maybe it's like, and I think the intent there is to say you can use it on a ranged unit, you can use it on a melee unit, whatever. But I imagine this is going to be very good for ranged units that are just trying to snipe heroes, and basically you're giving them Rend 1.
Yep, it's going to be good for KO.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Real good. Like, oh yeah, you can't hide in cover. We're coming for you.
This is the anti-wizard realm here.
Yeah. Realm of Death, Shyish. Necroquake is the spell. Or Ripples of the Necroquake. You add 1, or if it's successfully cast, you add 1 to casting rolls for friendly wizards until for casting endless spells until the end of the phase. So
I think this is good.
It's interesting. Considering you capped at 3 endless spells in a 2,000 point list, and you'd need to have multiple casts to make this happen, that's powering up the armies that run a bunch of endless spells.
Yeah.
So it's good for Tzeentch. It's almost a shrug for Hallowheart because they're getting so many bonuses anyway.
Yeah. It's good. It's not like it's situationally good.
Yep.
Terrain features though, this is big.
Everything is nullification.
Everybody can counter spells, so it's almost it makes the last one almost irrelevant because endless spells are very easy to dispel. So everybody has dispel. Everybody can counter anything. I believe they gain dispel from it. Nullification.
Yeah, everybody can unbind. And
endless spells that are set up or finish moves within 1 inch of any nullification terrain get dispelled automatically. So it almost makes endless spells worthless because every single piece of terrain has nullification. So if you ever come within 1 inch of nullification terrain, you're gone. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Although this is nice for Seraphon because they have their bound endless spells, so all they have to do is snake around and avoid terrain.
That's true. It makes those. It makes things like the pendulum, the one that moves in one direction.
Yeah.
Not very good though, because you're almost never going to be able to find a path where, depending on how the player is set up to the terrain, where like the endless spells will catch them. The other thing is like players could place terrain in such a way where like maybe a wall throughout the center of the board of terrain, so that way the nullification effect will impact all the endless spells that their opponent might have brought with their list. So that's why I think this is like the worst realm to be in if you brought a bunch of endless spells because
you're
not going to be able to do very much.
Yep. Your realm artifact reroll once to save. Yeah,
it's okay. It's yeah, who cares?
Your realm command. Pick a unit until the end of the battle round. Roll a die each time you take a wound or war wound. On a 6, it is negated. So you just get a 6-up death save for a command point.
Yeah.
I feel like that's not one that I would ever use.
Sean, to answer your question about when the next Masterpiece Miniatures video is coming out, it's been very, very difficult to make videos during the coronavirus because initially it was don't go see anyone. And then it's kind of laxed a little bit, but all of the local game stores around me do not allow you to play with one another. So it's been super difficult to find environments where we can play and record games and get a community going. And in general, it's been that because of coronavirus, we have not been able to make good videos. Yeah.
Yep.
But I want to. I want to play. It's really sucked the life out of painting for me because I have no one to play with. It's rough.
Yeah. And honestly, like, it's been rough for me to try and get painting done because I have 2 kids and they're like, at least one of them's at home all the time.
Yeah.
And my wife is still working. So
I was planning for Du Bois 2020. And unfortunately, like the hotels in New York, there are so many things that have to be done for a hotel to host one of these events, and there are so many potential things that we don't know about coronavirus that could come out that may cause the hotels to have to even put in more. Like a good example of that is like they have to have special filtration installed in the hotels so that it actually grabs the virus if somebody has it in the event. We have to separate the tables, so we need more room. It's very difficult to host an event, and we don't know what the precautions will be in the future. So we couldn't reliably tell people we could host the event because we don't know what's going to happen between now and November. So I bought this book and I was going to write a big packet, and I'm so excited for it. And hopefully there will be an event in 2021. But
all right, so we are on to Ulgu, the Realm of Shadow.
Ulgu, the Realm of Shadow, yes.
Yes. So
Judgment of
Judgment
Shadow.
of Shadow. You roll 7 dice. For each one that is less than the unit's unmodified save characteristic, that unit suffers 1 mortal wound. If the target has an unmodified save characteristic of dash, it suffers 1 mortal wound on a 2-up instead.
I think this is going to be a really good spell for certain case scenarios.
Yeah, I mean that's gonna take down some horde armies pretty good.
Yeah, I mean it's going to do like I don't know 3 or 4 damage. It's better than Arcane Bolt, but then
Right.
you'll have like Blood Reavers, and it'll just deal 7 damage. You're just this is a very big deal. This is going to suck for so many armies. So the Judgment of Shadow will not matter in many cases if the terrain the scenery is overgrown. And this is going to be another realm where it's very important that you pay attention to scenery placement. A lot of people we were talking to about scenery placement and the rules for scenery placement where you take turns. We're thinking about like strategies where you could place all the terrain on one side of the board and like force your opponent into a position where they couldn't place their scenery down. But I think that because all of these realms have like additional terrain features built onto them, I don't think you're going to see those case scenarios come up, especially in like the Realm of Shadow. Like there's a lot of ranged units in this game, and just about everybody has some kind of ranged unit that they're taking that requires some line of sight. And the Realm of Shadow is going to create some serious problems for those people, and you're going to see some very interesting terrain placement for that very reason.
Yep. Yeah, because overgrown blocks line of sight.
Oh yeah.
You basically pretend it's infinity inches tall.
Yep. I think it blocks line of sight if you're in it too. So like if you're standing in the terrain, you can't see out of it.
Yep.
So like you won't, for example, be able to buff friendly units if you can't see them.
Yeah. Right. Your realm artifacts are the Trickster's Foil. You reroll wound rolls of 1 for melee attacks.
This might actually be good.
Might be okay for some.
Yeah, because there's not a lot of good ways to modify wound rolls. There's tons of ways to modify hits.
Yeah.
Like the fact that you're modifying a wound roll, it might be good, but like I don't know if it'll be better than what you can already take.
Yeah. And our realm command, pick a friendly unit within 18 inches of a friendly hero, remove that unit from the battlefield, and set it up again, wholly within 6 inches of the friendly hero and more than 9 inches from enemy units. And that's once per battle. Once per battle, you get to teleport a unit.
That's insane. Like that literally it's so powerful that it can outright determine who wins a game.
Yeah.
Depending on when you use it. So I'm glad it's a once per battle ability.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can teleport something like 24 inches effectively. It's pretty good.
You can put it anywhere. Wait.
It has to be within 6 inches of that hero that's using it.
Wait a second. If you
the unit that you pick up has to be within 18.
Oh, so you teleport it to the hero.
Right.
It's very.
It already has to be within 18 of the hero.
I still think it's just incredibly powerful, depending on what happens. The other thing is it doesn't restrict movement. Oh, it's at the end of movement too, which is even better.
Yeah.
So you're just flat out gaining. Oh, that's really good, dude. I think that ability can be just game winning at times.
Yeah, there's a reason it's once per game.
Right. So I think that's amazing.
Yep. So that's it for the realms. There's definitely realmscape features. There's definitely stuff, I think, in every realm that is going to be relevant. And, well, except Gyran doesn't feel that crazy. It feels like the one with the least impact.
Yeah, Gyram is like the easy mode. That's like if you want to play a game and not worry about the realm, you play Gyram because most of it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Question is, which one is going to be the most impactful to play in?
You want my guess?
Yep.
I have a top 3.
Okay. Considering there's 7, that's picking almost 50%, but that's okay.
All right. My favorite realm, and I don't think it's the most impact. It has an impact, and it's better than people realize, is Akish. I think those fireballs are going to blow up every round, and things are going to die 10 times per round. Like, my turn, your turn, my turn, your turn, my turn, your turn. Everything's going to be blowing up. And eventually, people are going to realize how crazy it is. But initially, like, you're going to come back from a tournament, and it's going to be the realm of Akish, and everyone's going to be like, oh my God, I rolled so many 6s, and all of my guys were dying. And, like, you're going to hear that because they didn't respect how often it would happen. Realm of Akish is my favorite, flavor-wise and impact-wise. Like, it's impactful and flavorful. Next, most impactful period is going to be the Realm of Shadow.
Oh yeah,
hands without question.
Yeah,
like,
you have a spell that just like wrecks hordes. You have all of your terrain features you can't see through, and your realm command gets a once per game teleport. Like that's going to be some wild games.
And then Realm of Kamen is much more impactful than people are ever going to realize. Entangling Scenery is a bitch, and you have no idea until you've played with it.
Yep. And the spell is +1 to save, which is really hard to get access to. And the Realm Command is +1 to hit.
We had a scenario.
And it has probably the best artifact out of all the Realm artifacts.
We had a scenario.
Actually, I want to say definitely the best Realm artifact out of the Realm artifacts.
Absolutely. we had a scenario where one player had cast like an ability that reduced charge rolls by 1 on OCR Bone Reapers, and then he was on the terrain that like was -2, and he rolled a 2, and his movement was reduced by 1 to run.
So he had to move -1.
He had to move 3 inches because he ran, but if he hadn't run, he would have moved 4. But yeah, he ran -1. I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
Those are my 3 picks, my 3 favorites.
Yeah, I definitely would agree. I think Realm of Beasts is going to be really interesting for that command ability.
Oh yeah, super good.
Yeah, that's going to make for some wild games.
Well,
You're
and
just going to
the
go YOLO
magic,
with all your monsters.
the magic is great too. A 5 to add 2 to run charge rolls.
Yeah,
I mean, that's great.
Yep.
But Realm of Kamen, with between the terrain feature and the spell, those are all big deals.
Yep. All right, so next is auxiliary objectives. In general, awesome concept.
Love it. My favorite.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things about this whole book.
Yeah, and using these to determine minors instead of kill points, I think makes a lot of sense.
Oh yeah, and
kill points is dumb.
Yeah, kill points are dumb. It puts so this goes back to like me being a TO and thinking like, I don't want to make this decision. Kill points is stupid. I want the players to do their own thing. And what it does is it puts responsibility in the player's hand to determine whether or not they get the minor, major, or draw. You know, you're picking the ones that best suit your army.
Yeah. And there's 18 different ones, so it's hard to plan.
Yeah, and you got to pick 10 over the course of a 2-day event.
Yeah. So I like it. And they're not extraordinarily hard to do, but they're all going to make you go out of your way to do something that you're not necessarily always going to do.
Right. I love them. I think they're great. I think they're well designed. And I think it'll get more difficult when you get down to that 5th round and you're like, okay, what do I pick? Because you've either done the hard ones early or you've left them to the end.
Yeah. All right, and that takes us to Conquest Unbound. This is all the tournament pack stuff.
Another favorite for me.
Yeah, this is just giving us a solid outline of how to run tournaments, how to score tournaments. I like it. It's giving us results forms. Like, this is a really, really good system, I think.
Yeah, I have to bring up the old Du Bois packet, but I think the results form is very similar to our Du Bois packet.
Yeah, from my memory, it definitely is really similar.
It's like almost identical.
Yep.
Except 3 auxiliary objectives. So now they want us to do 3? That's a lot. I only had us do 2, but 3 makes sense because if you have people do 3, it's very unlikely that they will accomplish all 3 in one game.
Yeah.
That'll split the pack. So one of the things I love about this book is that they've accepted that it's never going to be a perfect tournament game. And what I mean by that is you can't play enough games to determine a true winner. A game of Age of Sigmar just takes way too long. So
right.
How do you remedy that? You have secondary, tertiary, and in this case, a 4th objective in addition to the primary goal. And you just make it so that it's so difficult to complete all of them that those who do, They get a bonus. Sure, here's a one. You did it.
I really like that they included team battles and multiplayer and all of those things in here. And then at the very back, we got the open war army generator, which I think is just a fun way if you're going to play a small, quick game to just throw an army together. And it's a good way too, I think. Like, there's always this conundrum that I run into when you have like a newer player that has bought like a start collecting box and 2 kits, and that's all they own. Like, playing like points against them is not necessarily going to be a fair battle.
Right.
So if you figure out what their force size is and then generate an army for yourself out of your own collection that's the same force size, I think that could come up with like a fun, fair game for a new player.
Yeah, it's kind of just it's a way to just like come up with a group of units that will be that'll have some relative balance, and that way they're not getting steamrolled and they're still
right.
Maybe they're given an opportunity to learn.
This is also really cool, I think, for players like you and me that have large collections in their army and just want to do something different and let the dice decide.
Yeah. I agree with that. I just get so sick and tired of playing match play games, and I just want to play something different. I don't care if it's completely imbalanced. I just want to drink a full bottle of Jameson and push the models across the field and roll dice and laugh.
So we got all the way through the main book.
Yeah.
Now we got the pitch battle profiles, which I know is like the thing you are least interested in.
I am the least interested in it, mostly because I know it's a clusterfuck. And I know that it's not meant to be what it is. It's not done. And
we have like a third of the armies that are not included in this.
Right.
And a lot of people are pissing and moaning because of that. But the thing that I want to plant my flag in the ground and say publicly right now, you all need to quit your bitching, because this is the result of getting 15 months of a book every month. This is what happens when you get rapid fire book releases and get a book for every army finally. Like, it's like there's a catch-up game somewhere. Something had to get neglected. The General's Handbook pitch battle profiles got neglected a little bit.
Well, I think people need to stop thinking of the pitch battle profiles as part of the General's Handbook.
Yes, I agree.
And that's why they're separated now. That's why they're in a separate pamphlet, because it's not really part of the General's Handbook is more like it's like an extended version of the core rules.
Right.
And the pitch battle profiles are just something completely separate. You get those in the app, and they get changed over the course of the year. That book will be outdated in like a month. That little book.
Yeah. But for the sake of it, let's talk about the big changes that happened. Okay. There was basic. How do you feel about your Corn Dragon going down 100 points?
I don't think it matters. I think he still sucks. You played against him. You saw he like bounced off your army.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm just really trying to hit the high points. So Slanesh got a bunch more points increases.
Mm-hmm.
Probably losing about an average of 100 points per army.
So they lost a unit.
Yeah. How do you think that is overall for Slanesh? Is that a significant nerf to them?
Well, everybody got a nerf. Okay, everyone got a nerf. Just to make that clear, before we even go into points, the artifacts are gone.
Yeah.
That's a huge deal. Like
Yeah.
my
And
army
Slanesh was using Ether Quartz Brooch and Thermal Rider Cloak.
right. So everyone's busted right now. Everyone's broken. I don't even know what balance looks like anymore, and I have a feeling we won't know what balance looks like until coronavirus goes away.
Yeah. Until like a solid 3 months after everybody's out of the coronavirus bubble.
I do know that OBR is too good at this point because OBR wasn't really using the realm artifacts the way everyone else was. They almost didn't care. So any book that was like independently good, like I think Zinch is also really good. Any book that like wasn't using the realm artifacts to supplement their lists is going to see a huge buff because they weren't leaning on those artifacts to keep up with the rest of the meta.
Yeah.
So I think if anything, it's going to create greater disparity between tier 1 and tier 2, tier 3 armies.
Yeah. I feel like the changes to Slanesh points they basically just slide them down a tier. Yeah, they were they were in that level that was like just below the broken armies. Okay. And I feel like this slides them down into the fat middle.
So you think this puts them into the Khorne Nurgle category, where they're fun to play against, they're appropriately costed, they're where they should be, but there's still armies out there that are too good.
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like that's about what this does to them.
I don't disagree with that. I think that's probably pretty fair assessment, but I won't know until like people start playing games. That's the biggest reason I kind of shy away from talking about points is like we don't have an opportunity to play games right now.
Yeah. Nurgle got a couple of major changes that like I think Nurgle is like one of the 2 most impacted armies in the book. Because our Putrid Blight Kings went down 20 points from 160 to 140.
Mm-hmm.
Also,
you lost all your mortal saves, like a lot of them. You had like saves in succession, which were part of the reason all the mortals were costed the way they were. And now that you don't have those, they're a lot worse.
Yeah, so also Glotkin went down 40 and is now under 400 points. Which I feel like is best for Slaves to Darkness.
Taking Glotkin in a Slaves list?
Yeah, and just run him up behind a lot of Marauders.
Be tanky? Is he tanky? What does he do?
No, his command ability adds 1 to the attack's characteristic for melee.
Oh, for like units within X inches or whatever.
Yeah.
So he's a big fat blood secretor. Okay, I never see people use him.
Well, yeah, because he was overcosted before.
Right.
And now I think he's still kind of high, but it's like he's going to be really good as an ally for Slaves to Darkness. He's going to be really good if you run the Nurgle Battalion in Beasts of Chaos and then ally him in.
I think Archaon's going to get better.
Yep.
Because Archaon has the ability to see the double turn, and he's got ways in Khorne to double attack.
Yep.
And those types of abilities have yet to be nerfed. And he's got a lot of built-in, like, powerful abilities that mean he doesn't have to take he doesn't have to take an artifact. He's not relying on the things that have gone away.
Right. Other than that, there's a bunch of other small points decreases around Nurgle. Nothing went up.
Mm-hmm.
So overall, though, like because people were already spamming Light Kings, like now you basically get another unit of Light Kings in your list.
Yeah.
Which I think is basically that might be just enough to get Nurgle up a little bit higher because Nurgle just like keeps getting like little buffs at a time. Like they got the FAQ that changed the 6+ to 6 for the exploding 6s on the Blight Kings.
That changed finally?
What?
That finally changed?
Yeah, it was in the winter FAQ.
Okay.
Wrath of the Everchosen, we got hosts, and the one for mortals is really good.
Okay.
And now we got points decreases.
I don't think we played a game since the winter.
Yeah.
I think the last time I played with you was just before December.
Yep.
At a tournament, and you did play.
Oh, God. I think I was playing Nurgle.
Yeah, you were playing something else. Yeah, you were playing Nurgle. You played against Ross's Ossiarch Bone Reapers, and you just bounced. You bounced off of him.
Oh, that was unbelievable. Anyway, so Skaven got a couple of changes. The notable changes. Let's see. Notable change.
Aether Quartz Brooch is going to hurt them like crazy. It wasn't that the thing that lets them get the generate additional command points on a 5+ every time they use one. What was that thing they used?
No, their Vermin Lords just already do that.
But there was an additional ability that on a 5+ every time you spend a command point you get another one back. There was another artifact, and so they would stack all these abilities that allowed them to just get like you would take command points.
Whenever their Vermin Lords use a command ability, well, actually, it's any Master Clan, I think.
Okay.
Or something like that. I forget exactly what it is. But whenever they use a command point on a 5+, they get it back. And then, like, the Warp Seer gives you an extra one on a 3+ every turn.
Right. But then there was an artifact in addition to that was on a 5+ as well. There
might be.
And so you
remember now. There might be another one.
You would take all 3, and then you would take the Broodlord, the war guy on the Broodlord, and like you would just spam his command ability like crazy until you had like 3 command points left, and you'd get your little clan rats up to like +20 attacks a model, and you'd just be like, all right, pick that unit up, it's dead. All that many dice.
Yeah. So big changes to Skaven. Scryer Acolytes got their unit size maximum cut from 30 to 20, which means now they are 20 for 200 and 5 for 60. So running a block of 20 Scryer Acolytes just got a lot cheaper.
Aren't Acolytes really good too?
Yeah.
And you don't want to take them in blocks bigger than 20 anyway.
Oh, God, no.
Yeah, you were only doing it to get the bonus. Right.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Storm Vermin went from 120 to 100. That's their elite rat infantry.
Wow. That's pretty good. For 5? 100 for 5?
100 for 10.
Wow. That's really good. Don't they have 4+ and they have like rend and like 3s and 3s?
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, you paid like 150 for that in Cities of Sigmar.
I'm thinking about bloodletters, and like bloodletters cost 110 per 10.
Yeah.
So they cost less than bloodletters.
Yep. And the biggest buff to Skaven, that's an even bigger buff to KO, Warp Lightning Vortex went down to 80.
Wow. That's stupid.
Like they
so good. But you know what? Everybody's being impacted by all these adjustments to the rules. So,
yep. And that one had such a big errata on it that it wasn't worth 100 points anymore.
gotcha.
Slaves to Darkness is going to be in the PDF update whenever we get that.
I imagine that's not going to change very much. I think Slaves is priced pretty appropriate.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's see. Death, there was really nothing exciting going on in there. Destruction, also not really anything exciting. And like Maw tribes and orcs anyway are both going to be in the PDF update. So 2 out of 3 armies are missing.
I'm a little nervous about that army. I think they got like huge nerfs with the loss of the artifacts, and I don't know how you correct the problem.
Which army?
Orcs and Maw tribes, because it's such a
lost the Ethereal Amulet, and we're both using it all the time.
It's such a straightforward army that, you know, how do you correct the loss of those tricks? You know what I think is going to be really good is if I think GW is going to allow for it, is the creation of custom characters and that ability to give +1 to hit to like a whole unit. Yeah. And just you're going to see like Ard Boys like with +1 to hit, and like just like a swath of them with like +1 damage and +1 to hit, and just like the big wah is going to go off, and that's going to just blow anything up, anything it touches.
Yep. Do a bunch of other small adjustments throughout armies. The big one though is Stormcast Eternals. Let me give you the short version. Almost everything went down 10 to 20 points.
It needed to.
Yeah.
Stormcast.
People put together some lists that are now 200 points cheaper.
Yeah. And even at 200 points cheaper, I think Stormcast plays so straightforward. I don't even know if that's enough. I don't know. It like obviously they can't like give Stormcast like 400 point reductions. Like that's too much. It's too risky. Like you might end up like just creating a scenario where they go from like being the worst to the best, and you don't want that. You kind of want to bring them. You want to like do it in increments. Like, okay, I want this game to be a struggle for Stormcast, but they don't need to, and they need to win a reasonable number of games, but they don't. We don't need to like shoot them up to tier 1 in one update.
Yep. Here's an interesting one out of this. The Celestant Prime.
The Swirly Boy?
Yep, Swirly Boy. Down to 300.
What was he at? Like 340?
340.
I didn't even look. I just was like, that seems like 340 points. 300. I think that's fair. Like he kind of comes down, he does a thing, and then he dies typically.
Yep. And this is another one of those buffs that like this is way better for Cities of Sigmar than it is for Stormcast. Because you run him in Hammerhall and he comes down on turn 2 or turn 3 and then attacks twice.
Yeah, he's a scalpel. He's a very expensive scalpel.
Yeah.
And he's only got 8 wounds on a 3-up, right?
Yep.
Yeah. He's good. I like him.
Yeah. And other than that, a bunch of small changes to armies. And Soul Scream Bridge went up from 80 to 100, which I think was necessary. Penumbral Engine went down 10 points.
Good. It shouldn't be. It's too expensive.
Yeah. And that's about it. So I feel like a lot of people have been complaining about the points changes. And here's my overall impression of it. Number one, we need to wait until we get the points updates for all the books that came out after Cities of Sigmar. That's number one. Assuming, let's just make the assumption for a second. Let's live in the world where all of those armies in there that are broken get fixed. Let's fix OBR, let's fix Tzeentch, let's fix Seraphon. If we fix all those armies, what does the meta look like? If we knock them down to like just middle of the pack with everybody else, all of a sudden, like those armies that got minor changes, like those are middle of the pack with everything else. Like the game has relative parity everywhere. Some are a little better than others, but we're a lot closer to that. Like everybody has, you know, with a 50% win rate within a margin of error. And I think Stormcast and Nurgle getting big changes lift them up out of being like in the bottom. And then Slaanesh needed to get knocked down, and Skaven have been the buffs to Skaven are not really, they don't hurt the current top tier lists. They make other lists viable.
The buffs to Skaven?
Yeah.
Well, they buffed units that people aren't using.
Exactly.
Yeah. Aside from the Vortex.
Well, a lot of people were putting that one away.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think it was still good. I mean, I don't know about 100 points, but it was still very good. I didn't play against it enough.
I mean,
you could
still set up with gnaw holes relatively close to your opponent, and then skitter leap a hero or a wizard over next to a gnaw hole, then cast the vortex, and then gnaw hole back in the movement phase.
That's very scary.
So you could still totally drop it on your opponent's front line turn one. Like it had to basically be closer to the board edge, but you could still do it.
Whenever I play against Skaven, I just like start the game with my characters, like with like Riptooth inside the gnaw hole, just like put him inside of it. I was like, I just don't want to deal with it. Here's 40 points of I don't want to deal with it.
Yeah. I think in general, if we're making the assumption that the armies that need to get fixed, I think we're in a very good place.
I just wish I could play.
Yeah, me too.
That's the other
all
thing.
Of the new awesome stuff in this book. Like there are so many great things in here. And I need to go back after and look at just how many pages in here are devoted to multiplayer. Because this is This is a 129-page book. I bet you more than a third of this is multiplayer.
Oh yeah, they're taking the multiplayer very seriously. They're treating multiplayer like it's a format, a separate format.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think they finally realized the thing too that like Magic realized that like everybody playing Magic, like Commander was low key the #1 format, and they didn't realize it. Right. And then they started putting out products for it, and it flew off the shelves. And now they're supporting it like as like a fully fledged regular format, as a multiplayer format. And it is hands down the most popular format for Magic now.
Yeah, I think you'll start to see maybe there will at one point be like a line where they create a series of like diplomatic style heroes that influence the game in a coalition setting more so than they would in a one-on-one setting.
Yeah. And that would be a great thing to throw in for Anvil of Apotheosis in like a next version of it.
Sure.
Have like a command ability or something like that. or another character archetype that has an ability that does that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, I mean, this book is a 10 out of 10 to me in the sense that it not only met my expectations, it went above and beyond my expectations. Most books that I read that come out from GW are like full of poor rules, full of just blatant loopholes. But I read through this whole thing and I'm like thinking like, how could a player take this the wrong way? And then I referenced the previous page and like the whole character building thing. I think I was in chat with you guys. I'm like, I can build a hero that does this, 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 and you're like, no, you can't, no, you can't, no, you can't, because of X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, where is that? Oh, it's on this page. Damn it.
Yeah.
Just like they covered all their bases really well. I'm sure there's some loopholes in it, but for the most part, this book is awesome. And forget the points. The points aren't part of the book. And
I think the points are fine. I am going to go out on a limb and say I think the points are fine.
I bet you the points are not fine, and I bet you it's because of the lack of games that are being played right now.
Probably. If they're not fine, it's because of that.
Yeah. And I think that's the only thing going against this hobby right now, and the only thing going against wargaming right now is the fact that everybody, well, not everybody, most people are having a really difficult time finding games. It's very hard to complain about imbalance when you don't even know it exists.
Yeah, that's true. But I think honestly, looking through this book, the only thing that I'm like, this is dead on arrival is meeting engagements.
Yeah, to me, it's just like it's in there, and I don't know why. The flying thing looks pretty cool.
Yeah,
I want to try it.
Yeah, I definitely want to try it too.
GHP was only $12 on the app. I
think so.
That's really good. Yeah.
Yeah, it was only like the paper version was only 35, which I thought was going to be more than that.
I hope they come out with another one of those like
gaming books,
the little mini books. Dude,
yep,
that was
and
awesome.
You know what they need to do now? In addition to that, they need to make a second one. That is the multiplayer gaming book.
The multiplayer mini book? So two separate books?
Yeah, have one for 2-player match play, one for multiplayer.
I'm about it. I like that idea. I think I love having the mini book. Having one less thing I need to carry around with me was, as a TO, like just having that mini book in my back pocket or wherever, and carrying it around and just kind of being able to point out the rules when people were having difficulty was so convenient.
Yeah. You know, while we're sitting here just chatting, I'm going to figure out how many pages are actually devoted to multiplayer, just so that we can have this on tape. Let's just keep talking about stuff.
Well, devoted to multiplayer. Well, I mean, I do have to get going eventually. I am on vacation, and this is fun for me because I haven't yet gotten the chance to talk about this book with. Well, I'll tell you exactly. All right, how about this? I will talk to you exactly about what I would have done for Du Bois this year, or what I would have tried to do.
Go for it.
I do not run the team format, so I would have no influence over the team format because I'm the head TO for the standard 1v1. And what I probably would have done is try to follow the tournament pack as closely as possible. I would have tested the terrain deployment rules, figured out how difficult they were to manage, putting 5 pieces of terrain down between 2 players, and then seeing what the pitfalls were with regard to like what if one player decides I'm going to just shove all of my pieces onto one deployment zone to stop you from strategically placing your alliance scenery. I want to play test that a little bit. I think that they've got a great solution down. but I want to play test that a little bit. I would have added the auxiliary objectives for sure. I did that last year. I would have done it this year. I would have tried to go on with 3, but my concern is from like a logistics standpoint. One of the problems with the auxiliary objectives is you need to keep track of each player's chosen auxiliary objectives. Otherwise, players tend to like either they forget or they actively cheat. Most cases they forget and they use the same auxiliary objective twice. The nice thing is that if you catch them, all you have to do is subtract 5 points from the total score because you in effect fail that objective, right?
Yep.
And the only time you have to really monitor it closely is you have to look at the winners. All right, these people are going to win all, if everything falls into line, which it should, these people are going to win. Check their stuff. If one of them failed to complete something, drop them down in rank. Most of the time, it's still the same couple people, unless it was the very bottom person and the next person is in a similar position. I would have allowed people to create their own heroes. I would have allowed 1 custom hero per army. I would have allowed a 40 DP for a general, and I would have allowed a 20 DP for a standard hero in your list. So you would have had to get
no
1
less.
Yeah, well, that would be the maximum number of DP, 40 or less.
So you would let people go smaller, but not larger.
I would let people go smaller if it was not their general. So
if it was their general, it had to be exactly 40.
40 or less. So you could do 20 points if you want, but your max DP if it's your general is 40. Your max DP if it's a standard hero is 20. That's probably what that's what I was thinking off the top of my head in terms of like allowing for a custom hero. I was also thinking about having a custom hero contest where all of the players would put their custom heroes out along with the worst rules that they'd created if they wanted to participate, and then have you write your own lore, like maybe 1 page of lore, so that way people can go across and like, oh, I really like how this looks. Let's see the lore tied to it, and then fall in love with that character, and then move to the next and read all the ones that they love the most, and then hopefully vote for the one that isn't necessarily just their friend's hero. They vote for the one they really like. I would have loved to have had a contest with that. And then, of course, I would have rolled random for every single realm. It's a lot less controversial this year because last year is like, guess what? Nobody can run. And we're playing Hammer and Anvil. But this year it would have been roll for the realm. It is whatever it is. And then I would have rolled for the different missions, and all of the missions would have came directly from the 2020 handbook. I would have not used any missions outside of the new ones. Because in my opinion, the way the points are designed, they're designed to be played at 2,000 points with the rules in the book and all the variants in between. And so that would have been my standard.
So I went through the book. We have 20 pages dedicated to strictly multiplayer stuff.
It's pretty good.
We have 20 pages that is just sky battles, which can also be played multiplayer.
Right.
We have Anvil of Apotheosis, which is like 10 pages that also can be used for multiplayer. Then we have all of the like pitch battle profile rules, like all of the general match play stuff, which can be used for multiplayer, all the realm rules that can be used for multiplayer. So a big percentage of this book is either exclusively for multiplayer or is useful in multiplayer.
Yeah.
So I think that was definitely a big focus for this GHB.
Yeah, I agree.
So I like it.
It's my favorite General's Handbook so far. It's the best one.
Yeah, I agree. This has definitely been the best one yet. Just funny because last year's was all a little bit disappointing for a lot of people, and I think a lot of people are down on this General's Handbook. I really don't understand it. Like the content of it is, I think, exactly what it needs to be.
What are they saying that's negative?
People are butthurt about the realm artifacts, which I don't think I mentioned before, but like in your basement games, play with malign sorcery stuff if you want. It's just being taken out for tournaments, basically. And even a lot of TOs are still going to allow it. So
I hope not.
I mean, I agree. Because I don't think the game is going to be balanced around it anymore.
Right.
Not that
that's my perspective. Well, the problem with allowing it is like, as the TO, the minute you deviate from the GW standard, it becomes your fault if people don't have fun.
Yep.
And it's like, I honestly think the current General's Handbook looks very fun to play, and I don't want to be held accountable for an NPE because of my decision as a TO to change those rules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People are also upset the points are not in it. And that, you know.
But that's like, something that never should have been in it.
Yeah. And that's fine, again, because we got a machine gun clip full of books all year. So like I you can't complain too much when rapid fire releases is the reason that your General's Handbook is behind.
I'm just waiting for the day where like GW just starts making the war scrolls like digital, and they just go, all right, the war scrolls are free, and like right now the points fluctuate, right? But like,
yeah,
they just start like altering the war scrolls, and I think people are gonna lose their shit. But I think that's like that's the future. GW is gonna it's they need that flexibility because there are so many variables in this game that you come out with this war scroll and it's got these fluffy rules and they're really cool, and then like you implement them in the game and you think it's going to be okay, but it happens to like play funny with this other subset of rules, and it kind of ruins the game to some degree. So right now what they do is they shift the points. Oh, that's more expensive, and they typically they may end up like pricing the unit out of the game. But really what I think they should do is, in many cases, seek to keep it at a specific price point, but alter the war scroll to keep it like, maybe tone it down a little bit, but it's still fluffy. I don't know. Yeah.
Overall, I'm very happy with this General's Handbook, and people need to quit their bitching.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Anyway, let's call it there. It's been fun. I think we did a pretty good, thorough review. Did 3.5 hours. So, it's been fun, and we will talk to you all later.
All right. Have a great day, everybody.